folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Hello, folks, and welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. A merry holiday season to you. A Merry Christmas, frohes Fest, frohe Weihnachten. I think it's gelukkige I always get it wrong. Keffies. Yeah, in South Africa. I always get the Afrikaans wrong. But welcome, everybody. For our Jewish friends who have been celebrating Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah to you. Ramadan doesn't fall this year at this time of the year. So for our Muslim friends, you've already had Ramadan. So I hope you had a good Ramadan. But folks, today, my special feature guest today is none other than Rob Hutchinson from DearSA, Dear South Africa. Now, you're wondering, what is that? Is that like an advice column? Is that like Ann Landers? Is that Dear Abby? No, it's not. It's not even remotely like that. So let me welcome my guest on. Rob, how are you today?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Chris.
It's my pleasure. It's good to have you on here. You know, it's interesting because the other day when Big Daddy Liberty had a show on, he took calls from the audience, and so I called in, and then he asked me to stay on the panel, which I'm fine to do. But I realized on that panel that everyone in the panel I had invited to my program at least one time, except yourself. And I felt that was an egregious error. So I think we've overcome that now, and you're here on the program. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you join us today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me again. And I was quite upset that I hadn't been on the show before, but but you made up for it in there. No, I'm kidding. Because
okay.
That was a great podcast. I must say, it was a great interview and a good panel there.
Yeah, I know it usually is. I have a lot of fun. Big Daddy doesn't invite me on often unless he thinks of something military. It just because he's a busy guy and he puts it at his mind, but he forgets that I've done pretty much everything under the sun except nuclear fusion. I haven't done that, but no. So you know, he does when Afghanistan is fine. Oh, let me get the colonel on, because it's military. He thinks of that. But no, I enjoy those conversations. If you'll indulge me for a moment, it is the Christmas season, and I do an Advent calendar every day, and so I'll do that right now. Today is the 16th, so we've got the Advent calendar right here. And I'm going to find my little chocolate treat, which is located up here in the 16. Take it out. Now, this is a crappy Advent calendar. I usually get a better one, but they didn't have them this year because they're imports from Germany, and they're not sending us stuff. So there's a little wrapped chocolate. Usually they're different treats, different shapes, different kinds of chocolate. They're all the same. So that's the 16th. We're now down, folks, to just 9 days to the Christmas holiday. For the sectors out there, the good, crass commercial Christmas, which we all enjoy with Santa Claus and Frosty the Snowman and all that stuff. And for those who are people of the Christian faith, celebrate the birth of the Christ child, just 9 days away. And my anniversary, my birthday, Christmas Day. So, Rob, let's go ahead and get started. You are the managing director of DearSA. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct, yes.
All right, so go ahead.
Yeah, so DearSA is a public participation platform. All we do is we facilitate public participation in all government decision-making processes, and then we follow up and make sure that government acknowledges all the public comments, has a say in them, and uses them to formulate great policy instead of policy that doesn't suit both sides. And it's taken quite an interesting turn because South Africa has a fantastic set of laws in the Constitution that compel government to involve the public in these decision-making processes. So every draft policy that has to go out has to be published in the Government Gazette, and the public have to be invited to have their say on that. And by law, government has to acknowledge and consider every single public comment that does arrive there from the public. It's very unlike a petition. A petition is normally a one-sided affair, either for or against something, and you can have 1 million signatures on a petition, and government will treat that as a single submission because everybody's obviously agreed to the petition mandate. Our process turns that on its head and turns every single public comment into an individual submission, which government then has to acknowledge and consider. So we literally flood them with individual submissions. In some cases, we've sent through up to 239,000 individual public submissions for one issue. And that was the land expropriation, amending the Constitution issue. And it's grown fantastically. It really has. Public have seen the benefits of it and the impact that it can create before policy is formed. Again, we've turned the whole civil society initiative and idea on its head. Most times, civil society organizations will pick up a problem from policy or something a government has done and take them to court on that matter. We do the opposite. So we allow the public to influence the policy before it becomes law, and therefore we can avoid expensive court cases after the fact. It's been a great time for the past 3 years, I must say.
So would an accurate description be, because I'm trying to equate it to something we'd know here in America, it's not a political action committee as such. Is it more of a civic action organization? Would that be a fair description?
Yes, definitely civic action organization. What it does is it places the power of the democracy in the hands of the people, the way it should be. So it essentially is a form of direct participative democracy, which, our democracy is a participative and representative democracy. We don't just elect people and then say, off you go, do your job. They have to involve the public in the daily governance decisions and processes. And this just facilitates that. The beauty of it is that we keep a record of all the participation. And if final decision goes against the majority of what the public wanted, then we have a solid ground for a court case, as it may be. We represent every person that participated in the campaign, and we can act on their behalf in court.
Oh, so you do also pursue legal action as well?
Yeah, yes, we definitely.
Okay.
do.
No, because other organizations like AfriForum, they pursue those sort of things. I think Solidarity also pursues legal cases. A number of organizations do that on behalf of South Africans. No, it's interesting because, of course, here in North America, in New England, we had genuine democracy early on, where everybody showed up and they got, well, all the males showed up, all the landed males, the free landed males showed up, and they got a vote, and that was true democracy. But that sort of thing only really works in small settings. You can't have 330 million people actively participate. So it is interesting what you're doing. Where did this come from? Was there some pent up frustration or anger because government was unresponsive? Was it someone's brainchild? Just tell us a little bit about how did DearSA come about? And you said 3 years, so it's not been around all that long.
No, not been around long at all. However, it's grown magnificently in that space. We've got around 1.3 million subscribers right now, and that's all going through active participants. So it's been absolutely fantastic. The idea came about way back. It was about 10 years ago, when I was involved in the anti-e-toll movement in Joburg. Yeah.
In Gauteng. The little violet lights that irradiate us.
That's it. Yeah, the disco lights we travel down the road and have a party underneath. That exact thing there. So according to that legislation, the government had to put that out for public comment as well, present the idea to the public, and then invite public comment and so on. However, 10 years ago or 12 years ago, they did that, and only 25 people responded. Only 25. And then government went ahead, they ticked the box and said, yeah, we've done it. Public participation has been brought forward. Nobody even knew what it was because they kept it to themselves. And e-tolls went up, and everybody saw these gantries going up, and what is this? But then government had to backpedal. Court challenges ensued from that, and I was involved in that whole process. So I was a founding director of an organization called OUTA. They, at the time, were opposition to Urban Tolling Alliance, and we just developed that further and further, created the groundswell and pursued it. And then I left OUTA about 4 years ago and thought, this is a problem that surfaces everywhere in government. Any societal problems are from inadequate policy, overbearing policy, or totally missing or absent policy. And there's no process that government really goes through to do this. Although they're mandated to do it, they don't do it for obvious reasons. So I just set up an organization. We started with one project in Cape Town. And then, as luck would have it, the government put out a call to change the names of airports all around the country. So we jumped on that bandwagon. And then the land expropriation idea reared its head in about June 2018. So we thought this is a great opportunity to launch an organization that actually does that. And we did. And it was all we do really is we form that middleman between civil society and government and facilitate that whole process. We educate the public as to what the policy is. We present both sides of it. We don't present a petition. We try to remain apolitical or non-partisan and present the proper views. And then get true democracy in action. We capture all the details, send them to government immediately, and then we also produce reports so government can have accurate data and doesn't have to trawl through hundreds of thousands of public comments. They can see what the general sentiment is. And that was it. It was pretty simple. It started off as a side project, but then took on a life of its own within no time at all. So I must say it's highly rewarding. It really is, because we really do create impact.
Well, I would have to agree that you do, absolutely, particularly on the expropriation without compensation nonsense that's going on. I try to warn South Africans back before my original channel was censored and suspended, and even with the new channel, I've tried to warn South Africans that this expropriation without compensation is about much more than what it appears to be, because I actually looked into it and read the stuff and the bill and stuff. It's about property. Property isn't just land. It's your tangible assets like stocks, bonds, your check account, your savings account, your truck, your jewelry, your homes, all these things. And what I've warned people is that the government of the day, whether it's the African National Congress or some other party 30 years down the road, will use this as a political tool to silence opposition. And that's the truly scary part about expropriation. It's not about righting historical wrongs. Most of that has been addressed. There were 75,000 plus land claims in the open window from 95 to 99, a 5-year period in which you could claim land back to 1910. Why? Because there was no South Africa before 1910. The Union of South Africa Act created South Africa out of independent Boer republics, African kingdoms, and British colonies, merged it all. And in 1913, the first racist legislation came out, which was the Native Lands Act, and we go from there. So that's a legitimate process. That's what they came up with. But it is interesting to see that this legislation comes out there and a lot of people don't know about it. I remember when the e-tolls came out, and my first time is I didn't even read about it. I'm down there. I'm living right next door. I'm paying attention, listening to the news every day in South Africa. I didn't even hear about the e-tolls until I started seeing these violet lights irradiate me driving around, from down past Centurion. It was like, what the heck is this? What's going on? Is this like a biohazard center or something? It looked like some sort of for hoof and mouth disease when you try to go through and try to radiate. I was like, what the heck's going on here? But what you're doing is interesting. Let me give you 2 examples here, Rob, real quickly, that things that for our audience that the general public doesn't see things, because it seems to me these legislative actions are, I don't want to say cloaked, and it's not malicious, but they're certainly written in a language that the average Joe or Jane really can't understand, or really wouldn't understand the importance of it. 2 things. The state of Pennsylvania passed a piece of legislation several years ago which allowed them to implement tolls on bridges. The intent of the legislation was new bridges, not existing bridges. The busiest bridge probably in the state is located just a few miles from my house. It's the South Bridge crossing the Susquehanna River to get from the West Bank to the East Bank, where the capital city of Harrisburg is at. And it has 100,000 probably or more, cars and trucks per day, if not more. They're trying to implement a toll on it. It's a 60-year-old bridge. That wasn't the basis. The reason for the tolls is to raise money to build new bridges. So they're trying to do that. So the public was unaware of it. It was put out there, but it's not like they put it in the newspapers and go, hey, look, we're going to talk about raising tolls on your bridge, because that would have got the public's attention. So they passed it in the light of day without people knowing about it, and nobody understood it. And now we're fighting a rearguard action against it. State legislators from the Republican Party and from the Democratic Party are trying to stop the tolling. That's one example of, is that one of those birds in South Africa? Those, what's they called?
Yes, it is.
I've got very acute hearing. I heard that bird. Those are,
yeah,
those are the most annoying birds, man. It makes me want to get my shotgun and go quail hunting.
No amount of bike muting is going to get rid of that. It's so
no, they are quite annoying, but that is entertaining. So the second one is that Pennsylvania, before our choosing of 2020, I can't call it a different word, begins with an E, because I'll get censored for that, because you can't say that here in the States. But the choosing of 2020, less than a year before that, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court set aside the redistricting that had happened about 5 years prior. But they wait till less than a year. So there were many congressional representatives in Pennsylvania who were campaigning in places they were no longer a candidate. They wasted time and resources and tried to bring people to their standard, and you're no longer in that district because they've changed the boundaries. It was immoral and I think illegal, but they got away with it. Anyway, so what happened this time is after that election, which had a dramatic impact. That's one of the reasons why the Democrats won the House of Representatives, because Pennsylvania had 12 Republicans and 6 Democrats. The redistricting resulted in 9 and 9. So that's a loss of 6 seats. That's almost the entire difference in the House of Representatives from one state alone, right here in Pennsylvania, because of a court decision. Yeah, which people overlook. It was a blue tsunami. No. It was one state that almost changed. Anyway, but back to the story. So this time, the court is ordered that the public be given a voice. Now, most people didn't know about it. I found out about it because I went to a local meeting with a political party, and they're like, yeah, you can go on the website. You just go check it out. So I went to the website, and about a dozen people submitted their own maps. Citizens created congressional districts based on the population, because they have to be roughly the same size, about 600 to 750,000 people in each district around the country. So they adjusted that a little bit. We lost a district. That's why we have to redistrict, because our population didn't decline, but Florida and Texas grew so much that they took one from California, they took one from Pennsylvania. We lose representation. So citizens are involved in this, and that's 2 examples right there of citizens getting involved. But the thing is, we don't have a Dear Pennsylvania. Maybe we need a Dear Pennsylvania.
Maybe you do, and I'm excited. Yes.
Well, we'll have to reach out for consultancy help on that one. But no, it's interesting. Well, let me ask you this, Rob. How did you come by this? Okay, you like I predate the ANC's arrival on the scene as a governing party of South Africa. So that means we're older than 30, and we'll leave it at that. But so obviously you were doing something in life before you did this. Are you an advocate, an attorney, or what did you do?
Not at all.
Avocado farmer?
Yeah, I wish I was. I'd have a lot better skin, but no, my training is actually as a creative in the advertising industry, and I spent 20 years.
So you're one of the madmen.
Exactly, and except I don't have a whiskey. I have a glass of water. Yeah, so it was a fantastic time in the advertising world, and I learned a lot. And I started off as a basic creative graphic designer and so on, and worked my way up to the strategic positions. So dealing with brand strategy, human behavioral psychology, and so on in brand building. And I became creative director of a couple of big agencies, and I found my passion there. My passion is definitely brand building, human behavior, influencing people, understanding target markets, and so on and so on. And then the advertising industry in South Africa turned sour, as it did in most of the world. It became very corporate, and I couldn't stand the whole corporate idea. It became bottom line focused instead of delivering good products. So I stepped out of that and moped around for a few years, as you tend to do when you don't have an idea, and found myself embedded in civil society movements. First locally, then I started a movement called Proudly E-Tag Free, which was the precursor to the whole e-tolls movement. And I literally became, I'd say, a keyboard warrior as such. So I started fantastic groups and put voices out and information out and riled up people. And then it took on a life of its own. And this was my full-time thing, because I didn't have a job at the time. I was just doing freelance and part-time work. And we started bridge banner protests. Bridges across the highway would stand on top with banners and rile up a whole lot of people, get the public sorted out. And it built up an immense following. And it was pretty impactful as well. So Art at the time was fighting in the court. We were growing as groundswell, and we had a massive following of around about 280,000 people. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. And we convinced, I'd say, over 70% of Gauteng motorists not to take up the e-toll idea. And from that, the bug just bit. I found this is my calling. This is my passion. It really is something I can get into, and making a little difference where I can. And then Arta became something. Moved into different areas and started taking on bigger issues outside of e-tolls. And then, as I said, I left about 4 years ago. And then I stepped into politics, interestingly enough. You get this idea in your head that, you know, I'm just an ordinary citizen, but if I have the backing of government and I can get into that thing, then I can make an even bigger difference. Of course, I went in there blinded, and then the blinkers came off when I was in that space. So through an election process, I was elected as Deputy General Secretary of Congress of the People, which was COPE, which was an offshoot.
Terra Lakota.
Yeah. Fantastic human being, I must say. He really is a good person.
Yeah, we should be clear for my international audience. He's not called terror because he's a terrorist, but because he was a terror on the soccer pitch.
That's exactly right. Yeah, so he says.
Well, yeah, well, you know, I see. Sometimes we have to believe people's own press.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's true. I've seen him. He's brilliant. Very good human being with a good heart. He spent time on Robben Island as well with Mandela, and I was in the top circle there. He was number 1. I was number 4. But I quickly found that it's not what I want to do. Mm-hmm. When you enter the political space and you become a politician, that's my dog making.
Yeah, I see. He probably wants a hadida.
Yeah. I found that you're bound by very strict rules, regulations, and ideology, and you become pretty ineffective. So I lasted a while. I learned a hell of a lot. I'm not going to lie. I learned the inner processes of politics, of parliament, of the legislative process. But more importantly, I think I learned the personalities of government officials and what they respond to and what they don't respond to. And I come from my advertising background. I think I had that sort of insight where you observe a lot and then form strategies on how to build relationships and influence people. So that insight led to where I am now, DearSA Africa. I was running the two parallel. And then I just stepped away from politics. I lasted about a year and couldn't take it anymore. So I thought, no ways, I've got to get into full-time into DearSA Africa and make a difference where it really can be made and felt. And the rest is history. The rest is history. Here we are. DearSA Africa's run or completed over 220 campaigns in a very short space of time, amassed a considerable database, a good following, and good relationships with government, funny enough. So obviously I was exposed to the inner workings there. So I formed relationships with various office, various committees, and at all levels of parliament and government. And it's certainly helped a lot. There are a lot of organizations fight government, others lobby for government, but we do both. So a very unique position there. Governments come to rely on us now to produce reports for them and facilitate their participation processes, even to the point now where we have been asked to develop systems for government. So it's really great. I think the impact that it has created is definitely measurable, and it's working. It's working and catching on quickly. We've been approached, not just Pennsylvania a few months ago, but by other countries and other states as well. We're in your wonderful land. And we've had interest from Netherlands and Australia and Namibia and other African countries up to Ghana, Kenya, and so on to implement a similar system there to give the public a strong voice that actually creates impact. And people have got terribly bored and disheartened by petitions.
Yeah.
There are countless petitions.
They've never accomplished anything. I've never gotten it. It's online. It's just become a whole industry where people do these things to make money off it. It's petitions accomplish nothing. But it's interesting. You mentioned having that insight because you were in the advertising business, understanding human nature and getting, as I was a counterintelligence agent among many other affectations I've had, and you've got to kind of get a feel for being able to read people. It doesn't mean you're always right, but you get kind of, and you know what I'm talking about, Rob. You get kind of an innate ability to see where people are going, what motivates them, what turns them off, and how you can get them to do something even if they don't want to do it. Especially advertisers. Absolutely. Buy this fragrance. It smells like dog dung, but it's still pretty good. good. It's and people buy it. Just stick Kardashian on it, and they'll buy it by the bucket load. Yeah, I know. No, but seriously, it's that ability really serves well. It's interesting. Now, I would say this. Tell me if I'm wrong or correct me if you disagree, but I should think that for genuine people serving who are patriotic, who really want to make a difference in governance, in this case, we're talking about South Africa, but I mean all over the world, because there's genuine people like that. Not all of our politicians are crooked or dishonest or are just in it for a paycheck. Certainly that describes a lot of them in South Africa, but not all of them. But those who are genuinely interested, whatever their party affiliation, I would think that your activities might be a distraction for them at times or frustrating because it demands their attention. But ultimately, they're probably, in some respects, I think some probably very happy in an organization like yours exists because you take that cacophony of voices out there that are easy to dismiss and coalesce it and fire a salvo right at the place it needs to go so they can interact. Am I missing the mark, or does that sound fair?
No, you're 100% on the mark. It's exactly what we have done. And that's why the relationships have been formed. So we work in collaboration with a lot of other organizations as well as government. We're not shy to say that we're not specialists in whatever field it is, and we will collaborate with a partner that is a specialist in it. We'll just drive the public participation and interaction portion of any campaign that goes out. But there does have its drawbacks every now and then, because we do tend to flood government with thousands and thousands and thousands of opinions and submissions. So we've had to develop a great system where we can separate the comments, identify the comments, discard irrelevant comments, and a lot of people actually don't even comment. They just select yes, no, maybe, and then they think it's a voting system. But what government is after at the end of the day is quality input on policy, not just thousands and thousands of entries that say, no, I'm against this. So we're trying to distill the reports so that they actually do provide government with great info. Government has had a historical problem of connecting and getting information from people on the ground. And then they make assumptions and then create crap policy. So we facilitate that and get that voice right up to where it should go.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, I had no mechanism to engage. I'm not South African, first off, but I had no mechanism to engage the South African government when I wrote my article a few years ago, which initially I published on LinkedIn, on land and poverty in South Africa. Because unlike a lot of folks who would just have taken your thing and thought it was a poll and said yes or no, I actually offered solutions. I mean, I came up with solutions on how you resolve this, and it would be nice to see the South African government deal with this. Now, this was about expropriation, and so I wrote this thing, and I called it Solutions for the Benefit of South Africans, Not Their Politicians. And it's an op-ed piece, and I said, establish a national sovereign wealth fund. Ramaphosa talked about doing that a year ago, but there's no real sovereign wealth fund. Reform, resource, and redeploy the South African Police Service to provide security. That would make a difference. Reform public education. And then I said, eliminate corruption and corrupt practices. Good luck with that. It's gotten worse, not better. And then implement genuine land reforms, not window dressing, because there's a need for land reform. But one doesn't have to own land to avoid poverty. That's not exactly the answer. People seem to think, and I ask questions about, who lost land since 1910. That's legitimate basis for that. Who actually wants land? Because that's the story that people are telling. Everyone wants land. That's not the case. Most people that want land want a plot to build a house on or to have a home on, not to farm. 40 billion black South Africans don't want to become farmers. That's a misnomer. Why do people want the land? What's its intended purpose? Where would the claimants like to own land? I mean, I can give you land in the Karoo, but that's probably not where you want it. There's no water. You're not going to get much there. And then what are the plans? Does the government provide agricultural support, extension services, vocational, technical skills training, funding, grants, loans? No, they don't do any of that. So those are all things. And so I had solutions on there, how you could actually do this. But there would have been nice to have a mechanism where somebody could support that, or send that kind of information in. Because to me, from the outside, and Rob, I don't know if you want to comment on this or not. It's your thought. But before you do, folks, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. It's Thursday, the 16th of December, 2021. My special feature guest today is Rob Hutchinson, the managing director of DearSA. No, it's not a gossip column. It's not Dear Abby. It's actually a civic organization for helping South Africans. But anyway, so I said, sorry, when I see DearSA, when I first saw it the first time, I thought it was a gossip column. Maybe it's a good marketing tool. It gets people to look at it. But anyway, where was I going with this? I lost track where I was going. Senior moment here. I feel like Joe Biden.
Land expropriation, yeah.
Land Joe Biden. You know, the thing.
The thing. Come on, man.
Come on, man. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are creating. You know, the thing.
Yeah. What am I doing here?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's fine. You know, it's interesting because in the vice presidential debate back in 1992, Admiral Stockdale, who'd been a POW in Vietnam and he rose to the rank of admiral in the Navy, he was picked as vice presidential candidate to go along with Ross Perot, who's running as an independent. And they had a vice presidential debate, and he was there with the three candidates from three parties, and people really didn't know much about him except people that knew about his history in the military. And he says, "Who am I? What am I doing here?" And that became a meme, and it just, oh my gosh. So we ought to bring that back for Joe Biden. What am I doing here? Hang on. I had a list here who I'm supposed to talk to. There's little cartoons here. Let me call on Jenny from AP. Oh, my gosh. You talk about embarrassing, man. Boy, you know, anyway.
And put him in the wheelchair.
Oh, man. It's elder abuse. His family ought to be charged with elder abuse. It's really sad.
They should be.
It really should. But let me get this, so maybe I can get back to my thought in a moment. But there's a lot of people in the chat who are supporters of DearSA. They support what you're doing. Wolf says, I'm subscribed to DearSA, support their efforts. Marilyn said same thing. A lot of people here. So you've got a lot of my viewers already supporting DearSA. But to get back to, I can't remember what the thought was. So sorry. But before we get back to that, let me ask this question. How can people actually participate or support DearSA? Is obviously there's got to be a cost to doing these things. It's not like everybody just sits around and you pay for bandwidth and you pay for computers and you pay for court cases. You've got to raise funds some way. Does that come through charitable donations or the Norwegians or something like that?
Yeah, it does. So we formed, or what should I say, we are sponsored majority by the public. Everybody who participates is taken to a thank you page and offered the choice of whether they want to donate or contribute in any way they can. But we don't force it on anybody. We don't actively go out and seek funds. What we do is generally from our hearts. We're not doing this to make money. We don't pay huge salaries. We've got a pretty small but effective team. And I say we've got a core team of 6 people. And then we grow and expand per project as we need to do through outsourcing and freelancers and so on. So we run a pretty efficient and tight ship. We have to. In the nonprofit space, you never know what's going on. But yeah, it's a very simple process. You go to DearSA's.co.za, have a look at what the latest campaigns are, whatever picks your fancy, have your say there. And then what happens is your comment is converted into an official submission to government in the back end and delivered instantaneously through to the correct government representative or office. And then you get a thank you to share it and so on. And then we keep a record of all of that and produce the reports at the end of the participation process, which is normally around 30 to 60 days. In some cases, they knock it down to 14 days, but it doesn't matter. There was one case where we did this with the IRR. It was a collaboration with them. We found a notification that government had published in one newspaper that was about reforming the Electoral Act, introducing alternative forms of voting. And it was just after the whole mail-in ballot issue that had happened there. Face palm indeed. So it immediately caught our attention, but government didn't publish it in the National Gazette like they're supposed to. So immediately we thought, no, there's some ill intent here. And then we went into it, and they wanted to introduce electronic voting because of the COVID pandemic and so on and so on. And we thought, no, absolutely ridiculous. So we contacted the parliamentary committee. We requested an extension because it was only 1 day left for public comments, and they granted it. They granted us a week to set up a public participation process, and we did. We notified our network, and we sent through, I think it was about 19,000 individual submissions through to government in 1 week. And as a result of that, government withdrew that clause in the draft legislation, shelved it, and then had a relook at the whole process. So they immediately, we can say, if we didn't exist, that would have gone through without a doubt, without any opposition And then it would have been up to some organization to spend millions in court trying to have that withdrawn, have that legislation overturned. So it was very effective there. I don't know where I was going with this.
No, I was saying but the senior moment's gone. I remember my point now, and I've got a new one too. So yeah, no, it's well, it's again, Rob. Over 30. We've got to be careful and keep our thoughts together. But seriously, but seriously, so I was going to ask a question about the expropriation thing, but there's something else I want to throw in here very quickly, and hopefully I'll remember the expropriation, then give you a chance to gather your thoughts. But so here's the thing: people think that you can't have an impact. You really can have an impact. Let me just give you a case right here. Now, I'm still waiting to break this news. Some of my viewers can piece it together because they know what happened. But I interviewed an election analyst in South Africa. There's a private individual who looks at the data from the IEC. And they've been looking at it for years and noticed a trend of patterns and mistakes that are happening and trying to get them changing. So this person discovered in one particular municipality here in South Africa, in the November 1st election, that there was a tabulation error, or we're not going to say it was malicious, but let's just tabulation error, because 190 votes were added to the EFF's tally in one ward, which was outrageous, was more than the total votes in the ward. So there's something clearly wrong there. And what it did is, on the proportional representation on the second round they go through, it kept a new local party, from actually getting a seat. This is their first election they stood for. So this election analyst, I brought him on the channel, not to talk about that, but to talk about the general tenor of what happened in the election, how it works, and what challenges are with the IEC. An organization that tells you have 48 hours to appeal a result, and then they don't publish results till 96 hours after the election. It's kind of hard to comply when the election results aren't even published yet. Anyway, so we talked, and he said that he'd written to the IEC and they had not responded. They'd ignored him. This was a couple weeks after the election. And offline, I said, "Hey, listen, could you put me in touch with that local party? I'd like to interview them. If they've got something going on at the IEC, I won't talk about that. But I like to interview parties. I interviewed 8 different political parties in the build-up to the election, and I'd like to talk to a local party. I was trying to get independent candidates and smaller parties just to see what's your motivation, why did you stand up, what are you hoping to accomplish, do you have bigger ambitions?" So I brought the party on, and then we had the conversation, and they were willing to talk about this issue. So we talked about the end. And I found out that they, in fact, had written a letter to the IEC, and the IEC sent back a perfunctory email to them and basically telling them the futsek, you didn't provide any evidence to us. It's too late. You missed the window, yada, yada, yada. And to which I said, wait a second. The IEC made a mistake. And even if they had published results in on time, this was a very esoteric sort of piece of data point that a candidate or a political party wouldn't know. You have to have somebody that knows data, that does a statistician, somebody like that can actually catch this because of that sort of error. So, I interviewed them, and then afterwards I contacted an attorney I know in South Africa and said, listen, can you put me in touch with someone that deals with the IEC and with elections, because I've got a local party in South Africa that should have gotten a seat, and they didn't get a seat, and that's not just, that's not fair. And if the IEC had investigated, I wouldn't say anything, but they just blew them off, and they blew the analyst off. So he put me in touch with an attorney. I hosted a Zoom session with the party leader and their attorneys, and with the attorney in South Africa. And he said, I think we got something here. There's a new group that does something related to this. They've been around for a few months. This looks like the perfect case for them to take on for their first try. So we did it. On the 14th of December, 2 days ago, the IEC wrote back. Now, the EFF lost the seat, so they had to write to the EFF and say, you have a chance to appeal it. Apparently, they didn't. So on the 14th of December, they wrote and they said to the South African government, we have to step in and correct this. This party will get the seat on this council. So my point here is that I'm an American sitting here, and I have no dog in the fight except right and wrong. And what I saw was a clear wrong. I took the parties, brought them together, and it made a difference. I'm not trying to say I'm like DearSA. That's not it. But my point is that I played a middleman to bring the people together to pursue just outcome, and we've got a just outcome. I'll be doing an airing of that with interviews with the attorneys, with the party, with the person who'll fill that seat, and with the analyst as soon as we get all together. But one of the people's not available right now. That's why I'm holding off.
That is absolutely amazing. I mean, that's exactly what ordinary citizens and DearSA South Africa actually does. Playing the middleman is extremely important in civil society, because you notice a problem, but you generally don't have the means to resolve that problem. But you do have the connections and the know-how and the knowledge to put the two individuals together. Problem versus solution, come together, let's make it happen, and let's make sure that you do actually solve the problem. It's great. That's the basis of civil society. I'm surprised you didn't start an organization from that caters for other political parties and candidates.
Maybe I'll get a honorary affiliation with DearSA on the basis of what I'm doing.
Without a doubt. Philadelphia chapter, here we come.
Oh, no, not Philadelphia. Oh, God, no. Oh, God, no. That's 2 hours from here. I wish it was 20 hours from here. Oh, that town is a mess. It's a mess, an absolute mess. But no, it's the thing about this is it was wrong. And here's the thing about this, Rob. How many mistakes? Because, I mean, people make mistakes. It was a tabulation error. We don't think it was malicious. It was a tabulation error. But how many times does that play out, particularly for a small party? And they blew off the elections analyst because he's not a lawyer, because he's not from some big name organization. He's just a guy that does this, and he's a statistician. He's very good at it, by the way. And they just, we don't care. We don't have time for you. And then the party themselves who ran and stood the election, they said it, they pointed out, and they just dismissed it. Well, you didn't respond in time. In a very perfunctory and rude manner, by the way. I have the email that they sent. It's very disrespectful. But anyway, I mean, they didn't insult them, but it's just, the way you should address this a legitimate question and concern. But what happens is that they blew them off. But I know how people respond when an attorney gets involved. And that's why I said, I got to get an attorney here. So we got an attorney, we got a civil organization and who has an attorney, and they sent a letter with an office letterhead from a practicing attorney. And suddenly the IEC is paying attention and answering. Now, how many times has this played out amongst the 325 parties, most of whom are tiny parties all over the country? I'm willing to bet probably a couple dozen people who should be in office are not in office because of similar mistakes and the IEC refusal to look at these. And that's unjust. That's unjust.
Yes, and it is totally unjust. And I think it's pretty common, actually, especially in South Africa. There's been numerous reports about the IEC not attending to certain issues, but not only just not attending to certain issues, but favoring certain parties and individuals over others. And, that goes against the independent Electoral Commission. There seems to be no independence in that Electoral Commission. And that's been a common problem where they sort of favor the ANC on many occasions. And I'm not afraid to say that they do. And the decisions that they make are also questionable at the end of the day. And they're supposed to go through the whole process where any party can submit an objection immediately after an election, contest the results. So they don't have to even wait for the end of it. They can still say something's not right here. And then the IEC is supposed to consider all of those and then make a decision and then declare elections free and fair. That process happens almost on the same day. I remember from the 2019 elections. And you're sitting in the big counting hall at the IEC office and you think, how do they declare this a free and fair election
sham.
So quickly?
I mean, it's a sham. How could you, when there hasn't been an opportunity for somebody to claim that there's a misdeed or a mistake or fraud? Yeah, they did this time. It's free and fair. And then the media just runs with it as if that was the point I want to get earlier, is that one of the points. One of the frustrating things is what you're doing at DearSA. That's why the fourth estate exists. The media is supposed to exist to inform the public, to let them know what the government's up to. I mean, that's one of their amazing reasons for existing. But no, they're just in collusion. They go along with it. But as far as your point about the Electoral Commission, listen, when they got former Deputy Chief Justice Moseneke to be doing an investigation, they wait until June for him to do the investigation instead of doing it January, February, when they knew they had an election coming up. Because to me, it was an intentional effort to run out the clock. That's my view on it, and I'm sticking to that because I've seen no evidence to be run contrary to my analysis. But he comes out and he says we can't hold a free and fair election. And that's when I started calling them the captured Electoral Commission, the CEC, not the independent, because clearly they did this for the ANC, which is wildly unpopular, especially in the aftermath of the internal party insurrection in July in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng, when the ANC was imploding on itself and 100,000 looters destroyed KZN. They're wildly unpopular, and they would do. By the way, the Democratic Alliance, very quickly, is crowing about this election. Well, we are the only major party that arrested our decline. No, you didn't. In 2019, we don't care about that because 2019 doesn't matter. That's a national election. It has no bearing. 2016 is the yardstick. In 2016, you got 37% more votes than you got this time. The ANC lost 32%. So how did you arrest your decline? That's the first thing. The second thing is, well, the ANC's been brought below 50%. Here's a news flash for the Democratic Alliance and for the electorate in South Africa. The ANC's at 13%. How do you say 13%? Well, there are 39 million eligible voters in South Africa, and 5.4 million people pulled a ballot. Not 11 million because they take the proportional. That's a sham. That's a sham. That's a sham. You have to vote. You have to take the votes for the ward candidates. That's an actual vote for someone. And there were 5.4 million votes for ANC candidates across the country, which doesn't matter. It's in the precincts in the wards. But that's it. So 13% of the eligible population voted for the ANC. That is not a mandate. That's not even a victory. 13%, that's abysmal. That's abysmal.
And And isn't that a terrifying thought as well?
It is.
That 13% of the population declared who will govern this country.
Well, they declared
That's
122 municipalities are governed by the ANC because of 5.4 million people.
That's exactly it. And I've often said to the DA that the worst thing you can do is campaign for people to actually get up and vote, because the more people that get up and vote, I promise you, the smaller your portion is going to be.
Well,
you should be encouraging people not to vote.
Right. Well, yeah, I wouldn't do that, but I get your point. But your point's spot on. So, Rob, I started doing election coverage of this municipal election in June of last year. And I would have done it sooner, but see, I did my original channel was just a couple Iceland waterfall videos because I was an intelligence officer and I couldn't exactly be doing that sort of thing. So when I retired from active service in October 2019, I started my channel to support my consultancy. And so what I did was I started covering Africa because I'm an Africanist and with a focus on Southern Africa because that's my real love and forte. But anyway, I was going to cover the election in South Africa. I mentioned a couple short videos, but then the lockdown came. When the lockdown was eased in June of last year, I said, opposition parties, this is your time. This is when you can take back South Africa. This is the most important consequential election in history of South Africa, bar none. And the reason it is because people are angry, but they're angry because of things that can be handled at the local level because the ANC is corrupt or inept or just doesn't care. And so if you want to fix things and you want to bring people to your standard, now's the time to do it. And the problem in South Africa, like so many other countries, is that people start campaigning 30, 60, 90 days before an election. And that's typical. People are like, oh, here they come again with more promises. It must be election time. You need to be an active political party that's out every day recruiting people to your standard in townships, in mining hostels, in rural farms, in ranches, and in urban centers, leafy suburbs. You need to go everywhere. And you know what I got from a lot of Southerners last year, especially white South? Well, I can't go to the Cape Flats. It's not safe for me there. Well, there's people that live in the Cape Flats who have the same values as you. Find out who they are, bring them to your standard, get them to recruit people from the Cape Flats or from Alexandria or wherever it is. And this falls on deaf ears. I preached this for over a year. I tried to interview the Democratic Alliance. It's almost impossible to get them come on the air. I did get other parties on there as the election came up, but the point here is that it's a blood sport. You were in COPE. You've got to do this all the time. You can't just wait for an election, and that's what opposition parties in South Africa do. They wait for an election, but they didn't prepare for this. And here's the thing I said, and back to your point about don't vote. Historically, municipal elections the world over, but especially in South Africa, 31 to 38% of the electorate turn out. And when you have a small number of voters, it takes fewer votes to win. That's it. So here's a good example. In Nelson Mandela Bay, the 2011 result, if the DA had kept the 9,000 votes total that they had from 2011 in 2016, they would have had outright majority in Nelson Mandela Bay. They would never have had to get a coalition with a little party that wanted to be corrupt. They could have just had it on their own and governed that city. But no, they lost 9,000 votes. Even though they got 45% of the vote, they would have had over 50% if they hadn't lost those 9,000 votes. This time they've fallen even further back. My point is that a small number, and the perfect case of this is the following. The EFF gained over 200 seats, but they lost 23,000 total votes from 2016. They declined. They actually lost 2% of the vote total, but gained 200 seats because the ANC imploded, and so did the DA. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that the IFP has massive gains, but they didn't gain any votes. They only added 8,000 new votes. That's it. So people are like, look at the IFP, and congratulations. But what Mangosuthu Buthelezi was honest. He said, we retain our historical voters. He's right. He's the only person who was honest about it. The rest of that sentence is, but we didn't gain any new votes. They need to gain if they want to. But the point is that the ANC imploded. That's why they're doing well. Now, the party that did well was the Freedom Front Plus. They had 67 seats in 2016 that they won. They won some in the by-elections, but 2016 they won 67. Now they have 220. And they took their vote from 115,000 to 276,000 votes. Now, in the scheme of things, that's not a lot of votes, but that's a huge leap, and especially in the number of seats. They had a far larger gain in council seats than they did in vote. And that's because they won in the places where they needed to get the seat. And that's the point which you're getting at. The fewer people that vote, the better chance for a small party to get a seat. Otherwise, you're going to be drowned out by the ANC supporters.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think the Freedom Front had a very good strategy. They focused on the areas where they knew they could win, and they didn't even bother with the areas where they stood no chance. And I think, I've always said that politics is a very, very strange thing. You have a look at the leaderboard, and the person or the party in third place is generally the party that carries the most power and a chance of influencing any election. Simply because the people in first place, they focus on retaining that first place. And they will find their clique, but they generally can't take a hard stance against anything because they're too scared to lose it, especially as they approach 50% and start on a downward trend. The party in second place, the official opposition, is in the same position. They can't, they want to take first place, but they're in that position where they have to appeal to everyone because there simply aren't enough voters to follow a specific ideology, especially in the DA's case. So they sit on the fence, they don't take any hard lines, they flip-flop from one side to the other, all because they're too scared to take a hard stance because they might lose second place. The party in the third place really doesn't care. They can do whatever they want.
It's EFF.
They can do whatever they want. Exactly. So they know that if they push hard in one direction, they might appeal to either second place or third place. And they know that it's they can say a hard line, they can do whatever they want, and without any fear of losing any credible position, they can only gain from what they do. The Freedom Front Plus have sort of adopted that idea. They stuck to their morals, they've stuck to their messaging, their ideology and their policies haven't changed in over a decade. So they've kept a consistent voter base, which was quite a niche market now. But what's happened now is, as the ANC and the DA implode, the people are looking for a viable alternative, and that alternative just happens to be the Freedom Front Plus. So that's where their growth has come from, and because they've been consistent, the voters who now have found home in the Freedom Front Plus are likely to stay there.
Yeah,
because they've developed their policies, they've got experience in those policies, and they're unwavering in those policies.
They're consistent too. You know, that's
consistent.
That's a big problem here in the United States. I mean, the Democratic Party has become the demonic party. I mean, they don't believe in liberal democracy. They believe in theft and government redistribution. And it's almost like the ANC has set up camp in D.C. It's bizarre. But the Democratic Party is unrecognizable. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't like the Democratic Party, but at least they stood for morality and they stood for, good governance. But now, I mean, we have anti-Semites in Congress. We have a whole squad of them. They're called the Squad. They're all anti-Semites, Jew-hating people. And they say this vile racism and bigotry with impunity, and they don't get called on it by a corrupt press. It's very frustrating what's happened there. But, it's interesting. Corona's boring. This guy is one of the coolest usernames. Corona's boring. Do the alien thing. Anyway, he said, I always laugh when I see that name. But he said, I met Buthelezi when I was around 12. I pestered him with political questions while he was waiting for his limo. What a good oak. I've got nothing but good things to say. Pity isn't younger. I agree. Mangosuthu Buthelezi, I think, is a treasure for South Africa. At least, I mean, he's a human being. He's probably flawed. I'm sure he's done something wrong at some point. But by and large, I'd say he's a great oak. And I really have tried to get him on an interview, but he's a nonagenarian. He's incredibly busy, what with the royal family secession for the Zulus and also trying to get people to calm down for the riots. And now he's tested positive for the Rona again. So I hope he recovers. I hate to see him go from the scene because I think that'll be a loss for South Africa. He's been a very much a calming influence in there. And if it wasn't for the ascension of Jacob Zuma, I think the Inkatha Freedom Party would not nearly be in as bad a condition as it is today. But of course, a lot of people gravitated to Zuma and the ANC, which is interesting because traditionally the ANC was seen as a Xhosa party for decades. It was dominated by the Xhosa, not exclusive, but that was where most of the leadership came from. And then with Zuma's ascension, that sort of upset the apple cart for some folks. But it is interesting, what's going on there. So let me ask you this question, Rob. My concern was this municipal election. I think that honestly, I'm glad it happened. The Constitution was followed. That really irritated me that the government was trying to circumvent the Constitution, and so was the IEC. But the court said no, you got to do it. I'm glad they did, but I'm not at all happy or content with results of this election. I find it depressing that 5.4 million people could vote for the ANC, given the daily corruption scandals, the theft of PPE dollars, the squandered billions that were donated from others, the race pandering and race hustling by Ramaphosa, running around accusing people of racism to cover up his failures, and not addressing what's really wrong in the country, the dumbing down of education standards instead of putting money into education. The list goes on and on. The sewage in the streets in Nelson Mandela Bay, the no water, the lack of integrated planning. Now the Grippins are grounded because they can't even pay a contractor to maintain them. The list goes on and on. We've seen the Type 209 diesel submarines in port for months on end. They can't put to sea. The cruisers, $7 billion wasted on that. That could have been spent on education, schools, abolitionists. I mean, how anybody could vote for the ANC other than identity politics makes me scratch my head. Or unless you're a cadre and you want to be enriched, then I can see why you'd vote for him. But I'm really disappointed in this, that the Democratic Alliance really, in my view, and I'm not asking you to comment on parties if you don't want to, but they really screwed the pooch here. This was a golden opportunity, and they scored an own goal. And I'm not talking about putting signs up in Phoenix that, that people said were racist. Actually, putting those signs up I thought was stupid because it was insensitive. But when you took them down, it was even dumber, and that cost them votes, because especially after Steenhuisen said that, no, it's about, celebrating communities coming together. So they hit a lot of own goals, and of course the DA would blame the mainstream media, but you know where the mainstream media is coming from. You know they're against you, so you have to have your own plan. In my view, they did nothing. The only party that impressed me in this was the IFP by arrest. They're the party that arrested their decline, and they did well. But they could have done better, I think, especially given the gravity of what happened in KZN. They should have been campaigning against the insurrection and riots. That's what they should have been talking about. This government can't even provide local policing. It can't defend your shores, your shop. Your spaza shop is torched because they didn't do anything. Your tuck shop is gone because they didn't do anything. You don't have a job at game because it's melted to the ground. None of this was done. And that's in front of the opposition parties. Now, the reason I have a problem with the DA specifically is that they're like, the DA gets things done. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. That's true in Mid-Val, and that's true in Nelson. But what about the Cape Flats? You open yourself up to criticism. You've got to be able to address that. And the other thing is that the lesson they learned in 2019 is that, don't attack the ANC. If we attack the ANC, we won't get votes. That's not the lesson. No, Musi Maimane was the problem, and this drift towards the ANC was the problem in 2019. What you should have learned from 2019 is that you can attack the ruling party, and it will get you votes. And what they should have done here is not even attack the ruling party. Here, I tell you, Rob, you're in advertising. This was it. Are you ready? Hey, how's that cooked chicken? Proudly brought to you by Latuli House. No open-toed shoes, no e-commerce. Brought to you by Cyril Ramaphosa and the National Coronavirus Command Council. Hey, have you lost your job this year? Proudly brought to you by Latuli House. That's what should have been done. Attack the National Coronavirus Command Council's unconstitutional, declared by the North Gauteng High Court unconstitutional actions. Oh, you got company there.
Just my dog wants to get out.
Oh, okay. No, so attack the NCCC and attack the ANC's policies and their corruption. Don't attack the party. And they didn't do that. There should have been a two-pronged approach. But I think that maybe even my concerns may not be valid because it seems like there's a pervasive level of apathy in the electorate in South Africa. What do you think?
100%. Apathy is a major problem in South Africa. But we've got to understand where the apathy is coming from. It's in an ANC voter. If an ANC voter is upset with the party, they won't vote for another party. They simply just won't vote. So it's a great reflection. The ANC should have had a look at this and think, why is there such a low voter turnout? And it's because you're not doing your job. Your voters are upset with you, and so on. And the same applies to the DA, except the DA voter will look for another party to vote for. And that's what happened with the DA. It's the DA don't amaze me, and I don't have a problem with commenting on political parties because, well, I'll stop there. But I think the DA could have done a hell of a lot better if they sorted out their internal issues. They took a harder stance against everything. They tried to. I think John Steenhuisen did on various occasions stood up, but then he was shot down by other members within his own party. That just shows, it just breaks confidence with the voter. If the DA can't sort out their own internal affairs, how can they possibly govern the country? How will they be able to stand up in a coalition government? Because that's what the next government is going to be, is a coalition government. And if they just are too afraid to offend people and are too afraid to take a hard stance, that's not what this country needs right now. And that is exactly why the EFF do actually quite well, is because they take that hard stance. They're not scared to say what they think their voter or their electorate wants. And they're not scared to attack other parties and individuals. And I think we need to see more of that. I don't think we need to see more of the radicalized left or the right coming up, but we definitely need to see a good stand up from the moderate and middle and say, enough's enough. This is the policy. That policy doesn't work. Let's go here. You're making an idiot out of yourself. But will that happen in SA politics? I don't think so. I think we have a very immature democracy at this stage and a very immature political party and should I say National Assembly, a very immature National Assembly as well, which is kind of concerning because that spills down into the voters as well. We have voters who vote based on loyalty, not based on anything else. We've been voting ANC for this many years. Even DA voters, they vote based on loyalty. My family did this. My family voted for that.
Rob, sorry to interrupt.
Policy.
Do you need to let your dog out for a second? I can let you get up and I'll.
No, so she's gone. Someone
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It sounds like the dog really had to get out. I don't want you to have a mess to clean up.
Oh, it's a bull terrier, so she's like, get me out! I was going to break the door down. But
yeah. Sorry, you were saying the DA for years. Your family.
Yeah, the DA, and it spills down into the electorate as well, where loyalists, you vote on loyalty instead of on policy. Very few voters look at actual policy and think, well, this is a great policy. This fits with me. They vote because it's a mob mentality and everyone else is doing it. Let's go for that. So I think South Africans need to get educated a lot more about the voting and the importance thereof. And also to remind themselves that they're not voting for a soccer team or a celebrity.
This isn't Kaiser Chiefs.
Yeah, because that's what it seems to be. But you're voting for this policy. This party is promising you this. This affects you directly. Is that what you want?
Yep.
Or does that option over there look better? And will we get there? I think we have a long way to go. Maybe 2 generations at least to get to that point until we have a proper democracy.
Yeah, I think 3 points to that is that people need to remember, first off, that South Africa's democracy is very young, not even 3 decades old. So let's keep that in perspective. So when we beat up those of us outside South Africa and South Africans self-flagellate over South Africa's governance, it is only 3 decades old. It may seem like a long time in our lifespans, but in the span of history, it's an eye drop. Second thing is that as far as political parties, you mentioned the Freedom Front Plus, and we mentioned their consistency. I read their platform in 2019 because, of course, the Freedom Front Plus has a reputation from being the Freedom Front and Constantine Viljoen forming that party at the end of the apartheid era. And it was seen as a right-wing, Christian, Afrikaner party, and that's all they cared about was the perception of them. Now, I think that might have been not an unfair perception, certainly early in their history, but I took another look at them in 2019 as I was looking at all the major parties, and I looked at their platform, and their platform was more centrist than any political party in South Africa that I could find. There are a few things that are to the right, conservative, Christian values, things like that, but most of what they were saying was just, legitimate democratic governments right here, and market-based capital economy. It was right in the center. So, and they've been consistent. Like you said, they've stuck to that, and I think that when you're consistent, people are going to come to your standard because you become reliable, and maybe that's why a lot of people have gone to them. I think that's a big part of this. But and there was a third point I want to get, but I've just lost it. That was the first point I was going to mention. Senior moments keep creeping in here, I'm telling you. But folks, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcast Network. It's the 16th of December, 2021. My special feature guest today is Rob Hutchinson. Well, I'll have Rob for a little bit longer if he can hang around. You got a pressing appointment, or can you stay with us a little bit longer?
I can stay.
All right, excellent.
I'm here for you.
Okay, so we've been talking about South Africa's political scene and what DearSA does. He's the managing director of DearSA, not a gossip column, but actually a civic organization that helps people interact with the government to get information to them. And that was my point earlier, Rob. It's just come back to me. So, with the expropriation without compensation thing, when they first tabled it, there were only a handful of comments that were submitted, I think, because I don't think a lot of people were aware of DearSA or knew how to engage the government directly, and it was kind of haphazard. And there was a lot of criticism about that because members of the government saying, "Oh, well, we've opened it up for comments from the public, and people aren't interested in commenting." I think people didn't know how to comment or just weren't really fully informed. Is that an accurate description of how it first came out, or am I mistaken? And then if that is accurate, how do we get to the point where DearSA and others come along and suddenly they're flooded with almost 300,000 submissions?
Okay, so I think it started off with a discussion in Parliament. Somebody, I think it was actually the EFF, raised a point that the current land redistribution process was flawed because it took too long because of negotiations between buyer and seller and so on, which right off the bat was a load of rubbish. The land restitution process was highly successful.
Yep.
And most cases I think it was well over 90% of the cases.
Well,
were
there were 75,000 plus. 74,000 have been resolved as of 15 years ago. There's only about 1,000, and that's because they're conflicting, confusing. Some people are put multiple claimants to the same land. People with it's so. But to be fair, that's overdue. It should have been, those should have been resolved. It was 99 when the window closed. But then Jacob Zuma opened up a fraudulent window again to distract from his state capture, and 142,000 additional applications came in, which has spread this thing out now because almost all of them are fraudulent or fictitious claims. Almost none of them have been proven to be true claims, and it's really clogged up the system. But all that said, the ANC doesn't devote the resources. They give hundreds of millions of dollars to bail out South African Airways, but they put $35 million for land acquisition in their budget. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Priorities in our government are absolutely skewed. There's no doubt, no question about that in any way. And yeah, you're right. It was so many things were resolved, and then the whole flood of new illegitimate claims did come in, and those are still ongoing. By the way, so I think they used that as a great political tool to introduce the idea of expropriation without compensation as a solution to speed up the land reform process. And that's when so then from there, they formed what's called a Constitutional Review Committee, which was an ad hoc committee specifically tasked to engage with the public, hold public hearings, invite public written comment, and to decide if the public felt that Section 25 of the Constitution was actually an impediment to the land reform process, and if so, what could be done to speed up the whole process. So that's when we jumped in and said, okay, let's facilitate this process. The CRC, the Constitutional Review Committee, was touring the country doing the public hearings, but nobody was really facilitating written comments for the individual. There were a lot of other organizations encouraging comments, but most of those were petitions. So the IRR ran one. They were quite successful in that. They had about 100,000 people signing a petition, which the IRR had drafted. But there was we wanted to hear from both sides and facilitate that whole process. So we launched a campaign there, and I think it was in June 2018. That got 239,000 comments from the public. About 57% of them said no, we should not be amending the Constitution. It's fine as it is. Let's continue with the process. And we sent all of those as individual submissions through to Parliament. And we pulled a bit of a media stunt, I must be honest. And we printed out every single one of them as an individual submission and hand delivered them to Parliament. So it was about 2 tons of paper that we had to deliver there.
Wow.
Sorry, environmentalists. It was
necessary.
Environmentally regenerative trees, but but it was great. And then what happened was the Constitutional Review Committee discarded all of the written submissions, and there were about 620,000, I think, from us and other organizations. And they formulated their report from 400 cherry-picked oral presentations, which they had found at these public hearings. And that was a disgrace, because they definitely weren't considering the voice of the general public. It was from the public hearings, which are mostly dominated by the EFF. At every public hearing, the EFF bussed their people in, and the chairperson, which was Vincent Smith at the time, he definitely favored the EFF and allowed the EFF and their supporters to present in the allocated time. And yeah, it was a farce. It was a total sham. So luckily we had the elections after that, and 2019 we had a change of parliament, and the whole process was restarted from scratch with a new committee and so on and so on. And they had 3 more public participation processes, of which we kept abreast of, encouraged more public participation, kept records of absolutely everything. I think to date we've sent, I'd say, around about 600, 700,000 individual comments
Wow.
on different participation campaigns for the land expropriation thing. And yeah, it's when they announced the final round and the decision to vote in Parliament, which must have been a few weeks ago. It was quite recently, and Parliament voted against it. It was absolutely lovely to see that. However, I know how Parliament works, and the matter has definitely not gone away. It's just been shelved for now, but it definitely will resurface in a different form or the same form closer to the elections, because it's a fantastic election tool, electioneering tool for both the EFF and the ANC. And my suspicion is that the EFF will raise the matter of land expropriation without compensation again, and use it to manipulate the ANC. They know the ANC is going to be losing even more, dropping below 50%, and the EFF will say, "Don't worry, we'll keep you above 50% if you support this and if you drive this, and we can be your vehicle and leverage for that." And I suspect the ANC will fall for it. They will more than likely join forces with the EFF at that stage, based around the promise of free distribution of land, which we all know is not true anyway. But
Well, they'll cling to power. That's what they'll do. Like all ruling parties, whether it's in DC or London or Berlin, it doesn't matter. They'll cling to power by any means necessary. And yeah, I think that's right. But it's the truth be damned. Facts don't matter here. And let me ask you, I don't know if you want to comment on this, but is this narrative fruitful because of identity politics? And I know the answer is yes, but I don't know if you want to comment. At least my view is yes. I mean, and I don't want to say people are racist because of it, but it's the them, we, them, and them, they, us, and that argument I think is really powerful for a lot of people, educated and otherwise, in the electorate. And it's very frustrating. If we look at Zimbabwe, so, Robert Mugabe can claim that, kith and kin came here and settler columns and stole all the land, conveniently forgetting two key points prior to that. Number one, the Bantu people only arrived there 1,500 years ago and occupy that, pushing the San over in towards the Kalahari. There's still about 5,000 San live in Zimbabwe, but they're a very small number of people. But they took the land and persecuted them and colonized, and then moved down into South Africa, crossing Limpopo. And then Mzilikazi, fleeing from after being defeated by the Zulu, and then being defeated by the Griquas, the Tswana, the Basotho, and the Trek Boers in combination and allies, defeated Mzilikazi. He flees to what becomes Matabeleland, displacing the Shona. And so, there's another occupation. Then, of course, Europeans arrive in the form of after the Jameson raid. They go up there. They do take land. They do occupy. They do come up with some racial policies, discriminate and take land away from people. That's all true. But here's the point. Since 1980 until 2000, that 20-year period, 42% of all commercial farmland designated by the government, not by some, analyst, but the government says this is commercial farmland. 42% of the land that was considered commercial farmland have been purchased at least one time. Some of it 3, 4, 5, 6 times, because farmland typically gets sold a lot, particularly for crop rotation. But 42%. So if the government of Zimbabwe was serious about giving land to war veterans or to black Zimbabweans, they could have acquired 42% of the commercial farmland because they had the first right of refusal. The Lancaster House Agreement said the government must approve all land sales. You cannot buy land, whether you're black, white, blue, or green, in Zimbabwe unless Mugabe's government says you can buy the land. So they look at it. No, we don't want it. And then the argument, well, we didn't have any money. The British didn't give us money. But that's a lie, too. The British government gave Zimbabwe 63 million pounds, which today would be, hundreds of millions of pounds, to buy commercial farmland. And they did buy it. And guess what they did with it? Sharon Speary had a farm. Mugabe had a farm. Constantine Chiwengo had a farm. Solomon Majuru had a farm. The list goes on and on. But black Zimbabweans didn't benefit because they were a thieving, lying sack of crap. And I suspect that if we had something similar going on in South Africa, that's exactly what's going to happen there. They'll take it for political elites. They'll distribute it for themselves, and they won't do it for the benefit of South Africans. So, but facts be damned, Rob. Facts be damned. 42% of the land. So all these white farmers in Zimbabwe that had land after 1980, half the land was land they bought with the government's approval. So to claim that settlers came and stole it is just total nonsense. And the same thing in South Africa.
Exactly, and that's the obvious argument that anybody who sits down for more than 5 minutes can actually decipher. But we don't. We act on emotion. We act on authority, and South Africans. I hate to say it, but we no matter who you are, across the board, we've grown accustomed to not thinking for ourselves. We've lost the ability to think critically.
Well, you're not alone, Rob. That's an American phenomenon too.
It's a global phenomenon.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. It's terrible, because what happens then is you start believing anything authority says to you, and that's a very dangerous place to be, because you should always question authority, no matter who it is. Always question it. You don't always have to disagree with it. You can agree with it and so on, but question it and make up your mind for yourself. Otherwise, you're on the back foot. But the majority of South Africans don't do that. We just follow blindly what the government says, and that makes political campaigning for radicals really easy. Really easy. You get the masses riled up. You say the reason you haven't got this land is because of those people over there, and you create friction, and then you step in as the hero to promise what you've told those people that they are missing. The truth is, majority of people don't want land.
Right.
It's what are we going to do with the land?
Well, only 13% of South Africa's land is even arable to begin with.
Exactly. So what do we want land for? Leave it to the farmers. I don't know how to farm, and I can guarantee you 99% of South Africans don't know how to farm either. What you're going to do with the land. And then people just have this blind misunderstanding. The EFF have been at the forefront of pushing the whole land expropriation thing. But they want government to be the custodian. Yeah. Well, the state to be custodian of the land. That means you will never be a landowner.
Exactly.
That means you will lease it.
That means you'll be like
what to do.
You're living in RDP housing, which they don't give you title to. By the way, so let me jump in there real quick before you go on with that thought. South African government has created billions of dollars of dead capital. Every single RDP house that the government retains title to the house and the land is dead capital. If you want to help poor South Africans, in particular poor black South Africans, and they're living in a government-built home, issue a title deed to them. Now they have collateral. They instantly have cash value. Now, some will sell their houses. Hey, that's on them. They live on the street, that sort of thing. But some will take that and go, hey, I want to open a tuck shop. So now I can go to the bank because I have a little parcel of land, a quarter of a hectare, and a little crappy house, but it's a house, and they can take it away. The bank can't. So I go, I've got collateral. They give me 10,000 Rand. I can start a tuck shop. Hey, look at that. Now I can feed my family. But that is dead capital. These people are not serious about ending poverty in South Africa because serfdom is how they stay in power. Sorry, I had to get in there.
Definitely. And on that note, it's amazing that you have to have the land, obviously, to raise capital and to go to the bank and have collateral. But what the South Africans don't understand is that without that, without a title deed, you literally have nothing. You will always be, as you say, a slave to the state, and the state can kick you off that land at any time that they feel they can. And what the EFF pushes, the second policy that they always push is white people are at a major advantage because we have generational wealth. Well, where did that generational wealth come from? Through title deeds, didn't it? So now,
okay.
Yeah. So
1 plus 1 is 37. Okay, got it.
Yeah, exactly. So now you're telling your electorate that you're not going to have the land. We will still own the land, and you must work the land. But hang on a second. We're also telling you that you're poor because you have no generational wealth. Well, aren't the EFF compounding that problem of lack of generational wealth by having state custodianship of the land? Of course they are. Of course they are. But the electorate doesn't understand this because all they hear is land and jobs now. Land and jobs now.
Exactly.
Which is, oh man, we have a lot of work to do in this country to educate the votes.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, if you talk about that, you look at the party platforms, because I read these things. The EFF had 8 pillars in their municipal elections for a party. Well, first off, I think that's a problem because all these political parties, your pillars, unless you're saying that you're going to force your party members who get elected in municipalities to follow the national party perspective for municipalities, you could say that. But okay, so 8 pillars, 6 of them had nothing to do with municipal governance. It was national governance or provincial. So they're getting people to vote for them on things that they're promising that they have no ability to address even remotely. And the ANC was no different. The ANC talked about this and other. But what I loved about the ANC, it was so comical watching Ramaphosa up there. we know we haven't always listened. We haven't always picked the best people. I was always, you know, like, I was watch that DearSA's commercial. It's not often I drink beer, my friends, but when I do, I drink ANC. You know, come on, give me a freaking break. You know, DearSA's. You know, it's the electorate the world over is so stupid. And if I offend people's feelings in the chat, I'm sorry, but a lot of stupid people with the inability to think critically. As Rob has just said, how can you be in favor of land expropriation and you're supporting the EFF when they want the state to own it, which means they control it? This is the same problem. Because then you can't build wealth. The same problem in Ghana, where land tenure is a major problem. You have a chief, a headman, who has control of all the land. And if you anger him or disappoint him or don't sleep with him, then guess what? You're out in the cold. And that's what happens when the state controls property. We've seen it time and again the world over, and that's what will happen to South Africans. And this is not a path out of poverty. It's a path to desolation.
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, land and property rights are the top priority. They're the top rights that any human being can have. I used to think it was freedom of speech, but land and property rights trump that, because I shouldn't use the word Trump in a
Oh no, we got shut down. No, just kidding. No. Well, no, but you're absolutely spot on with that. I mean, it's one of the reasons. See, we're one of the few countries in the world here in the U.S. where people actually own what's in or under their land. So there are exceptions. Sometimes people sell the land and the title for minerals is retained. But normally you buy the land and you have the mineral rights, the water that flows over it, the minerals under it, you own it. So if you have the good fortune that uranium or coal is on your land and a company wants to come in and mine it, they have to pay you for it. And you become wealthy, or at least have an income from it. But not in much of the world, not in South Africa. The state owns the minerals. That's nonsense. It should belong to people. And the one example of where people can profit from this is the Bafokeng clan in Northwest Province. They own the rights to the platinum that's being mined up there, and they've become, as a group, not individually, as a group, fabulously wealthy. Billions of dollars of revenue have accrued to the Bafokeng clan of the Tswana-speaking people. Yeah. The people should own what's on their land, not the state. This is a serious problem because the state just steals. They just steal. They just take money in royalties and fees, and then they just pilfer. And that's what the ANC has done. And they've wasted all this wealth. It's crazy.
It is. I mean, look, a government's job or the state's job is to spend money. It is. That's what they're there for. But when they spend it without any consequence, because they know that taxpayers are going to bail them out, that is a major problem. So that's where we are in South Africa. Is we have a government that has no idea how to run a business. Yet we have a multi-billionaire as a businessman as a president.
Wow.
We all know how he got wealthy.
Exactly. He's not a businessman. He's a patronage. He's a patronage puppy. That's what he is.
He is, absolutely. He is.
Yeah.
My dog's making noise again.
Yeah, I hear that.
But yeah, that's exactly what he is. And that's a problem. The second problem with our Ramaphosa, is
well, he's yours, not ours. But by the way, you can have Trevor Noah back if you'd like.
No, you can keep him. It was difficult enough to get him there, so you can keep him. Sorry,
Rob, it's sad. He was actually entertaining in South Africa. He was funny, but he was great. He's just a political hack here.
Totally. And a quick note on that.
Yeah.
I often wonder why people like him. He's in South Africa what we call coloured, mixed race.
But I got you. But that's not colored to me. Colored is a specific. He's a mixed race. There's a difference. Colored to me are a clear ethnic group of people who formed from the early Cape stuff. So for my international audience, because I make that very clear to them. So for instance, if I hooked up with a Zulu woman, my kid wouldn't be colored. They'd be mixed race. But if I hooked up with a Khoi woman or who was already descended from this group, then you could say colored. Yeah, or a Greek woman.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely correct.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
So his father is Swedish, I think.
Swiss.
There we go. Even worse. But and his mother is a black South African.
Yeah.
Now, why does he choose to side with the side that he does? Why does he disregard his father?
He's half white.
Exactly. So is it because of his political ambitions, or is it because of peer pressure, societal pressure, that he chose that? It seems very weird that he's attacking a certain demographic when half of his genetic makeup is that demographic. Why did he choose to identify as the other.
Well, in
South
America,
Africa, it was great.
in America, this stupid concept of one drop of African, excuse me,
Yeah.
drop of African heritage means that you're black, but that's nonsense. You can be whatever you want to be. So, and let me just an anecdotal story tell you something that just surprised me. So, Vanessa Williams, the former Miss America, who had to resign her title because she did these nude photos with lesbians back in the 80s, but very attractive woman, blue eyes, not lenses, but actual blue eyes, light caramel colored skin, very stunning looking woman, and a good actress and a decent singer. Vanessa Williams, they had this show, Who Do You Think You Are, which is about genealogy. It was a British show, then we had an American version of it, and they did her genealogy, and it was fascinating. So she has really famous ancestors who were in Tennessee, who antebellum, or not antebellum, post-Civil War, antes before, but post-Civil War, they became, after the vote was extended to black men, not women, but or white women, but the black men, a lot of black men got elected to state legislatures and to Congress, the federal level in the U.S., for about 30 years until the Klan and Jim Crow pushed them all back out. But she had ancestors who were key members of the legislature in Tennessee, and they accomplished historic things, who were black. And it was fascinating. And I was like enthralled by this story. Now, she is a child of privilege. Her parents are uber wealthy. She grew up in a ritzy white neighborhood in upstate New York. And she went to exclusive schools and all this stuff. Anyway, so she's on there. And two things she said really turned me off to her. The first was that her great-great-grandparents lived in Oyster Bay on Long Island in New York back in 1850 census. And in that census, they showed her, here's your great-great-grandparents. Your great-great-grandfather was mulatto, so mixed race. That was the term used then. And your grandmother was white. Oh, what a brave man. What a brave man. Wait a second. How about a brave couple? A white woman married to a mulatto living as free people on Long Island in 1850? And you don't think the white woman wasn't brave? I mean, give me a freaking break here. Are you serious? That's the first problem I have with it. The second problem I have with it is, I grew up and I was different and I was ostracized because I went to an all-white school. That's because your parents sent you there because you were uber rich. The woman, when I get a tan, looks whiter than I do, Rob. And to self-identify, now that's her prerogative. She wants to identify as black, yellow, green. It's her choice. But to ignore the other part of your heritage, Rob, when I was doing my genealogy years ago, I sent my DNA in, and people are like, hey, your grandmother's name is Ospelmeyer. That's Jewish. I said, no, I don't think it's Jewish. Well, what if it is Jewish? Well, what if it is? A whole new world opens up to me. The Jews have a great history, a fascinating history of success and oppression. So that'd be, if I have Jewish ancestry, cool. It doesn't change who I am. Now it turns out I didn't. That's true. It's just straight through German. But the point of the story is that I would have looked at it and embraced it. I don't care. What's the point? Like Afrikaners, 3 to 8% of the DNA of most of the white Afrikaners is actually African. And there's a reason for that. People have been knocking boots in the Western Cape back in the day. So people got to let go of this skin pigmentation nonsense. Anyway, we got off on a long diatribe there, but that's because the Trevor Noah thing.
We did. We did. I don't know what we were talking about before.
Well, before Trevor Noah, we were telling something important, and it just went right out the window. but maybe the
remind us in the comments.
Yeah, exactly. That's what actually, Rob, the comments have been very slow today. Because people have been very enthralled by the conversation. I can tell when people are listening and when they're actually, because they'll start chatting in the conversation about, so we're going to, hey, there's a program here. Pay attention to what's going on. And today people are paying attention. No, but let's ask this. Let me shift real quick completely to something different. So DearSA, if people would like to, now we actually were talking about that a while ago, not recently, but DearSA, if people would like to participate do you become a member, a supporter, a subscriber? What do you call that? A follower, a fan? What do you call it?
Yeah, it's just a participant.
A participant. There you go. Okay.
A participant, yeah. So you don't have to be a contributor or a member or anything else like that. It's completely open to anyone to participate. You just simply go to DearSAfrica.co.za, and then, as I said, have yourself whatever campaign tickles your fancy at that time. And then if you want to become a member, then become a member, and that helps us run more campaigns, reach a larger audience, and take matters to court where necessary. And we actually are tackling going to court. Maybe I shouldn't be revealing it, but I think it's pretty obvious where we're going. And we've been to court on a few lockdown measures as well. We had a few regulations overturned in the past because public participation wasn't followed or wasn't done properly. And some regulations were absolutely ridiculous, like the curfew and not the curfew, but the exercise window period and buying food online and buying goods online. We had those overturned. But what we really want to do here is challenge the COVID passports. And it's a contentious issue for South Africans. We've called them pass books rather than passports.
Ooh,
and,
sounds like apartheid to me.
It's 100%. It is. It's segregating society to those who can and those who can't, based on medical status, which we need to fight. We need to tackle this head on. And if we do, then the whole forced vaccination thing as well will go hand in hand with that and fall apart. So that's definitely going to be our next major campaign. We're running a participation campaign on that currently now. There's almost 200,000 participants in that already. And government has put together a task team to discuss the issue of mandatory vaccinations and passbooks. And we're expecting that draft policy to be published before the end of the year. And that's going to cause major headaches.
You almost said riots. I know. That'll be Jacob Zuma's return to escort.
Yes, it will be. Yeah, major riots. Although I think it will cause major riots. But this is the time for South Africans. Maybe not just South Africans, but I think people around the world. If we can set a precedent here in South Africa with a good court case, then there's no reason that can't be applied globally. It's the same policies that have been put out, it's the same regulations across the world, and the same agreements with pharmaceutical companies across the globe. So if we could get some success here, then hopefully we can take the whole thing globally, and other countries like yourself can use it. But it's going to require nice. Yes. Nice. You identify as vaccinated. I like that.
Yep. Well, actually, I've got some pretty strong positions on this. I've actually sacrificed, not a major thing, but made a sacrifice as a journalist because of it. So my position on this is twofold. Rob, let me get your thoughts. First off, this has been the gold standard since 1937. Now, the World Health Organization didn't exist until the United Nations was formed after World War II, but this was created by major nations in 1935 and went into effect in 1937. Of course, that's the cogent, the yellow card for immunizations. Herein, in this plastic bag, which keeps it from getting wet in case I drop it in the rain when I'm in an airport, are 7 shot records, and some of them have 2 and 3 books stapled inside it, with 5 decades of immunizations from everything from yellow fever to hepatitis to measles, mumps, rubella to typhoid. It's all in here.
Wow.
I have no objections to jabs. I've been a pincushion for the U.S. Army for 5 decades, and it works. So nothing. Why is this not the standard? Now we have to have mobile phones with electronic tracking devices here, which is what the phone is, with your date on it. Now, I can imagine arriving in Tanzania where the power's out and they turn on their computer and they can't because there's no power and have to spend 15 hours waiting for the power to come back on before we can actually get a signal and actually show my digital passport. So that's the first thing. The argument is, well, we do digital because that's more protected. People can fake these. You think they can't fake this? Brazil's database was just broken into, and hundreds of thousands of people had their vaccination status changed. So come on, that's stupid. So my issue with it is one thing is that what's wrong with this? If you want someone to show proof of vax, I'm okay with this. That's the standard. It has been for nearly a century. This is BS. This is control of people. This is 1984. That's the problem I have with that. So, and yes, I'm not a fool. I know all my apps and my GPS on here, people can't track me, but that's different. That's not the state tracking you, following you for your health status, which is your personal information. Now, the issue with the vax itself, this is why I say I'm identified as vaccinated. Whether I've been jabbed or not is nobody's damn business, except my primary care provider and a health official at a port of entry for a foreign country, which is sovereign, that I enter. It's their prerogative in OR Tambo to ask if I've been vaccinated against yellow fever. That is their prerogative because they're responsible for the health and safety of South Africans. If they want to ask me in Auckland, it's their prerogative. But it's not the prerogative of a restaurant to become an agent of the state to ask me for vaccination paperwork on a mobile phone. By the way, do toddlers have to carry these? In San Jose, the Sharks, the hockey team, now require 3-year-olds to produce proof of vaccination. 3-year-olds. Do they have mobile phones? This is ridiculous. So I recently was supposed to cover the All Blacks and the USA Eagles game in Washington, D.C. It was actually in Maryland. And Maryland doesn't have a passport requirement to go in. You don't have to prove you've been jabbed. Well, I was an accredited journalist there because I cover rugby. And 3 days before the game, they sent out updated standards, and now the spectators had to wear a mask, as did we, but nobody in the crowd had to prove their vaccination status to enter the stadium because it wasn't the state rule. But as a journalist, I was told I had to produce proof of my vaccination, and I told them get stuffed, which sucked. I really wanted to cover the game. I had to give up my media credentials because I was refusing to kowtow to their nonsense. It's a small thing, but the point is I went without because that's my position. It's nobody's business, and this digital stuff is crap. I worked for the National Security Agency. I was an intelligence officer for 3 decades plus. Let me tell you something. If you think this is secure, you will buy anything. I'm going to sell you beachfront property in the Northern Karoo. Let's get to it right now. Okay?
Oh, that's brilliant. Yes. Look, I totally agree. And I think we all know where that's headed. It's definitely not about the vaccine as such. The mere fact that they've introduced this electronic system raises alarm bells in my head. Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is look towards the East and China. Yeah. China's social credit system, which is slowly rolling out everywhere in the world. We've seen Australia wanting to introduce it now, New Zealand, and other countries in the world. That's where it's going. Social credit system where government monitors absolutely everything you do. If you're not a good citizen, you'll lose certain rights, travel restrictions will be placed on you, and so on. It's ushering in this what we call surveillance society mm-hmm. in this new normal. And that's even more concerning because that is the precursor, or should I say the foundation of good communism and good socialism, is you have to limit people's movements. You have to monitor what they're doing, what they're saying against the state, and so on. Because communism and socialism cannot be maintained without force. Yep. And the only people that can produce that force is the state. So it's obvious where we are going. And do we want to go that route? I certainly do not. I think, the whole vaccination thing is up to you as an individual. You want to get vaccinated, great. If I don't want to be, support my views. It's that it is. But to have this forced on individuals is definitely not the right way to go. I mean, where will it stop?
It won't stop. People will be in prison for lawful behavior, what is considered lawful behavior. And what's especially shocking for me, Rob, is that in the Anglo-Saxon world, the place that gave us the Magna Carta, the place that gave us English common law, the place that reverted back to the concept of the ancient Greeks and democracy for the United States, the oldest constitution in the world. Most constitutions, including the South African Constitution, are modeled in many respects after the U.S. Constitution. It's an absolutely brilliant document. Yes, I'm biased, but I'm right. Anyway, but the Anglo-Saxon world has lost its mind. The Australians are living in a penal colony. Do you know they are finishing up a quarantine detention center, which is located at the same location where they quarantine pets? And in 2013, they dedicated $293 million to build a facility to house birds and plants outside of Melbourne, in Mickleham. It's a suburb. Birds, plants, 240 cats, and 400 dogs. $293 million. Now they're spending $200 million. A decade later, inflation-adjusted dollars, which means it's not even worth $200 million in 2013 dollars. $200 million to house 1,000 quarantine detention center arrivals in Melbourne. In a facility for pets. And in Howard Springs, they've taken people in the dark of the night who are not infected. They've gone to this woman's home. She's not the only one. And they arrest her. They threaten her with a fine if she doesn't come voluntarily. They lock her up for 3 weeks. They test her. She's negative 3 times in a row. She was self-isolating. That's not good enough. They lock her up in this penal colony. They feed them 1 time a day. And then they threaten her when she complains about her liberty with intoxicating her and drugging her with Valium if she doesn't shut up. It is unbelievable what's happening. Bonhoeffer said it best. I think it was Bonhoeffer, the pastor in Germany. He said, when they came for the Jews, I said nothing. When they came for the aristocrats, I said nothing. When they came for the communists, I said nothing. And now they've come for me. Who will stand for me? There's nobody left. And that's what's happening now. And people cannot see this. This is not conspiracy. This is not hyperbole. It's simply factual. Who in their right mind 3 years ago would have said, hey, Australia has a detention center where they're taking people who aren't even infected with the disease and putting them in danger in this place. And by the way, she lost her job. She doesn't have a job now. So who's going to take care of that? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And it's happening the world over. Canada arrests a Polish immigrant for holding a church service because they were bumhurt because when they invaded his church without a warrant or probable cause, he yelled at them and embarrassed them. It was all caught on video and went viral around the world. So they decided to get even. So they do a perp walk, endangering public safety, stopping on a highway to arrest him on his knees, make sure the film crews are there, and then they charge him with crimes. They lock him up on a Friday so he can't get an attorney, so he has to spend the weekend. He can't get a hearing. He spends the weekend in jail just to harass him. Meanwhile, 10,000 people show up outside the Bell Center in Montreal for a hockey game, no mask, no social distancing, no arrest, no comment about the hypocrisy of 10,000 people standing next to each other, and a pastor who's a person of faith with 40 people in his church. And this is the world over. It's everywhere. Bojo has lost his mind. I think his cognitive abilities were damaged when he got the Rona. Bojo.
I totally agree, because he literally became a different person.
He's not a Tory. He's not a Tory. He's a permanent political class deep stater now. That's where he's at.
It was a fascinating thing, because he went into hospital, 3 weeks later came out, and he was a different person. I thought, no, they've replaced him with a robot.
No. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Remember that 1970s
Yes,
film?
that's it.
That's what it is. He's a pod. It's not really Boris Johnson. He's a clone.
That's exactly it. It was fascinating. So what happened to him? Who got to him? Who instilled this fear into him? Or was there a financial reward? Who knows?
Oh,
We've seen Jacinda Ardern, my least favorite person.
Oh, you know her. You know, hello, I'm Mr. Ed.
That was fascinating. Yes, you did that one.
I did do that one, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you saw that. Have you seen you watched my programming? Okay, cool.
Oh, it was brilliant. But I saw it. I don't know if this is true, but
yeah,
there was a meme going around, and there was a whole article about her personal wealth.
Yes,
from
I saw that.
$800,000 up to $25 million in the space of 1 year.
Yeah.
Where did their money come from, and what is it for?
Yeah, and then that's one I wish I could get the facts, because I would report endlessly, but I couldn't. So that's one I left to the social Twitter sphere, and I didn't report on it. But yeah, it is interesting because look at the wealth. Here's the thing: every crisis there are winners. Even in the Black Plague, there are winners. People who had mortuaries made money. People who took bodies off the streets made money. In this thing, the transport companies are making a fortune. DHL, UPS, our postal services, actually the countries that have real postal services, not South Africa, but they're the ones making money. They're making tons. And pharmaceuticals are making tons. Hospitals are making tons of money. Government officials are making tons of money because they're being bought off or they're getting election money donated, stuff like that. There are winners. Bill Gates, Larry Ellison, Elon Musk. The list is endless of people who made a fortune off of this. And, here's the thing. This whole thing with Cyril Ramaphosa and vaccine apartheid. Boy, just throw apartheid in anything, and boy, you just got people listening. And then now it's vaccine inequity, but because he's been called out on it. But South Africa didn't do anything to produce vaccines. They didn't even make an effort. They have an advanced pharmaceutical industry. They even have one of the world's most prominent generic manufacturers of drugs. That's Aspen Pharmacare, which is profitable. And they did nothing. They didn't offer to participate in any studies with Johnson & Johnson. So I found this article again today from Al Jazeera of a black elite African commentator last year who talked about, it's the colonial policy to experiment on Africans for drug trials. Well, there isn't any malaria here in the U.S. So if you want us to test malaria patients, it's kind of hard for us to develop a drug against malaria here because how are you going to know if it works if people don't have malaria? Genius. But anyway, so when it came to this drug, last year when Operation Warp Speed was rumored in April and announced in May, I said that this was going to be done primarily in the U.S. and probably also in the U.K., as opposed to there's also some big firms in Germany, Norway, and Sweden, and Switzerland, and France. That's where the main pharmaceutical manufacturers are, but most of them are in the States. And I said this is going to be tried on people here. And most of the people who are going to sign up for it, volunteer, are going to be white Americans. That's who they're going to try it on. And of course, I was correct. But all these black intellectuals, they want to experiment on black Africans, are all racist. And I'm like, huh? What are you talking about? And that's exactly what happened. It was the vast majority of people who volunteered for these trials in the 7 months when it was under development were white Americans and Brits. There were some people in the UK for AstraZeneca. And that's who it was. And that whole racist narrative just died because there's no substance to it. But it comes up. And the same thing's happened with Cyril Ramaphosa. If you want jabs, develop them. He's like, we have the capacity. Really? Where's your jab? The Indians have one. The Chinese have one. The Russians have one. Those are developing countries. Where's your jab, Cyril? Instead of blaming other people, and he went to Dakar and he said this in front of, and they're all cheering. Oh, this is the smartest thing I've ever heard. People writing, how stupid are you people? Can you not see this? And by the way, as far as jabs in South Africa, the United States and the European Union 3 months ago gave Aspen Pharmacare $711 million, $750 million to make jabs. And we gave them the intellectual property to, I think it was the Moderna vaccine. So they have the IP. And Moderna shipped them all the equipment. They shipped the dye to manufacturing. So Aspen has the money, they have the recipe, and they have the equipment. And guess how many doses they've made? Zero.
I'm guessing zero.
Zero. Yeah. So Ramaphosa is running around and lying about this, and people get away with this. And it's not just Ramaphosa. The Manchurian cadaver, Joe Biden does the same thing. It's just the world over. These people lie, and people are so gullible. There are more sheep on the planet now than there ever were in New Zealand.
Yes, that's very true. Very true.
Anyway.
And I think it goes even further than that. I think Ramaphosa is always going around the world and raising money and finding investments and so on and so on. But nothing ever seems to happen with these things. They pledge the investments, but they never seem to actually materialize. And we've recently seen it again, where he came back from, was it Davos or COP 20?
Oh, in Scotland, COP 26.
Yeah. And we came back, and the US and a couple of other countries are pledging 131 billion rand to South Africa to move away from coal. But I can tell you now that money will evaporate into the ether if it ever materializes. And that is the general thing that happens in South Africa. Our government pleads poverty, and we're still a developing nation, and so on and so on. And you need to help us. First world countries come step in. I'm sorry, South Africa should have been a first world country by now. That's the sad reality of it. We cannot continue calling ourselves the third world country and plead poverty to the rest of the world. There's a lot of money in this country. There's a hell of a lot of resources, a hell of a lot of minerals. It's a wealthy country. It really is. It's just poorly managed. If we had a government that actually cared about the wealth and the majority of the majority, they would actually step in. But in South Africa, it's each man for his own. And that isn't more obvious when you look at the government, and especially the ANC. The ANC is a club. You join it, you work your way to the top, and you get financial reward.
Well, you work your way to the top, or you assassinate your way to the top. Take your pick.
100%. All the killings of councillors in KZN.
Yeah.
That is just territorial murders. That's all it is. It's like gang territory. This is my territory. We're gonna claim or stake a claim to these tenders that are going out to this municipality. We know the municipality's budget is 40 billion rand, and we want a piece of that. And they will murder for it. And
without compunction. We saw a 36-year-old assassinated yesterday as he was approaching the court in Umlazi in Durban there yesterday. I didn't see if there was an update today. They think it was one of the prosecutors. It was a hit. And this stuff just goes on all the time. It's crazy. And as you mentioned, the counselors, that's something I report on for years, that phenomenon taking place in KZN where people want to get their dirty fingers on the tender, so they murder other ANC counselors, murdered by ANC, because now you're next on the list. You get to get up there. It's really sick stuff. It's by the way, Arctic, one of my viewers who's a pilot, by the way, says pledging's easy, signing checks a whole different story. I pledged $1 billion to Chris. Well, thank you for that, Arctic. I'll be sure to check my bank account. Never.
Exactly. And that's a beautiful thing about a pledge, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a marketing stunt at the end of the day.
Oh, the Paris Climate Accord is just a marketing stunt. And when Trump ran for office and he's going to pull us out, he's going to pull us out. You destroy the world. Like that was going to have an impact. First off, the United States is the only industrialized country in the world which has actually year after year reduced its carbon emissions since 2000. We didn't sign up for the Kyoto protocols. Yet we still met the standard on Kyoto. We didn't sign up for Paris. All we did, we made a pledge under Barack Obama, but there's no legal authority committing us to it. But nonetheless, despite America's population going from 290 million in about 2000 to 330 million today, which is a huge jump because of immigration and natural reproduction, We have added 40 million people to this country in 20 years, and we've accommodated them, and our economy has grown. We have become weaker as a consequence of it, and we've reduced our emissions. Our emissions now are 42% lower for carbon dioxide than they were in the year 2000 when there were 40 million less people in this country. That's 2/3 of South Africa's population. Yet these idiots are running around as if they've not reduced as much as they promised to do. We didn't promise jack. That the Paris Climate Accord is a scam. It's a scam. China's not a participant. They build 350 coal-fired power plants every year. Meanwhile, South Africans want people to starve and live in the dark and burn candles and get emphysema from breathing in charcoal fumes to heat their food instead of having electricity. This is absolute insanity. The second and third order effects of leftists and their stupidity is beyond belief. And it astounds me that people don't see it. I see people protesting. Thousands show up on the beaches in the Eastern Cape down there. Oh, Shell is doing seismic off the coast. Oh, the environment's coming to an end. I'm sorry. You were never there to go after the abalone poachers who are destroying the natural environment for decades, decimating the abalone population. Where are you? You're not out there protesting that. You're not getting the police involved to stop this. You can stop it overnight. You're not out there defending rhinos and sanctuaries. You're not trying to do that. You're not doing anything for the environment. You want people to be cold and suffer because they're going to do seismic testing the closest point, 20 kilometers off coast because you know nothing about geology and you claim it's going to destroy the world. Stop it. Stop. But seriously, Rob, thousands of people showed up for this demonstration, but we have nobody show up at Sea Point to complain about the police water cannoning restaurants in central Cape Town. It's just
absolutely.
Anyway,
Absolutely. I think when you come to highly emotional issues like the environment, people tend to act emotionally rather than stopping and thinking, okay, what is this about? I mean, we ran a campaign on that Shell seismic testing as well. And had over, I think, 58,000 participants, and still ongoing. But it is a highly emotional topic. But there's an absolute lack of understanding as to what it actually is. And you change the terminology, and you see groups like Greenpeace pitching in and calling it seismic blasting. And it's not blasting. As soon as you add that word into it, people think there's bombs going off in those seconds and so on. So it's a great manipulation of the psychology of people. And because humans act on emotion, first of all, we fall into that trap. But there's a whole school of thought around why would they protest against gas? Gas is one of the
cleanest forms of energy.
Totally. And then you've got to look at the renewables market as well. And there's a whole anti-nuclear movement as well.
Oh, don't get me started on that. Yeah, because nuclear is also safe. And the people are stuck in 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl from the 70s and 80s. Absolutely. That is not the nuclear industry today. Despite the fact that nuclear plants have been pretty much banned in most of the world, the technology from microreactors and grid-based networks, which are, even if they blew up, would have almost no impact except in a very small localized area. And they're easy to secure. And the technology is so advanced. The amount of nuclear waste is so much less than what it has been historically. But they can't get past the 1950s and 60s. They're all still sitting in that time frame, and they're doing great harm. France still gets 80% of its electricity from nuclear power. France does, and Japan used to.
To Germany.
Exactly. Well, because they've gone with solar panels and wind turbines that don't work.
Exactly.
Because we all know that Germany is a great sun destination. Everybody goes to Germany for the beaches, right? It's not like it rains there 9 months of the year. Good Lord.
That's true. That's true. And they also got the most expensive energy in the world.
They do. Oh, they do, and they've driven business away. They've driven business away. That's why Mercedes has a plant in Alabama and BMW has a plant in the Deep South as well, because it's just not effective for them to build it because they pay so much for labor and so much for electricity. It's off the charts. Hey, Rob, we could talk for hours, and I don't want to cut it off, but I think we probably should, because we probably got some stuff to do. But let me ask this question and get your thoughts on this when it comes to the energy thing too. So here's my position: develop a strategic plan to electrify all of South Africa, the 8 or 9% who still don't have electricity, with reliable, consistent power. And you're going to do that, in my book, by exploiting your coal reserves for the next 50 years. Build the power plants, put them up, put cleaner towers in with scrubbers that reduce the output and improve the technology as you go, and retrofit existing systems as you go along. Bring back the engineers you've discriminated against who fled to Japan, to France, to the UK to ply their wares. Bring them back and don't hire people based on racist policies. Do that, and your carbon emissions don't lose sleep, because as your economy grows, you'll develop more human capacity in your universities to come up with new techniques, plus you can incorporate them from around the world, and you can bring in alternative energy source, whether it's coal fusion or hydrogen or whatever it is. You can do that. But today, South Africans need reliable, safe, consistent electricity for safety, comfort, warmth, protecting their food in their fridges, protecting pharmaceuticals in fridges, and for their development. Kids shouldn't be learning by candlelight in South Africa. Kids shouldn't be going to, outdoor privies to go to the bathroom and dying in human feces falling in as a preschooler. That shouldn't be happening. So put the money there to develop your economy and have a long-term plan to reduce your emissions. And don't listen to the world about you being the 12th largest producer of carbon dioxide. It's because you mine so much in minerals. The platinum belt produces a lot of carbon dioxide. That's why you're producing it. It's not from consumers. So develop your economy, get electricity there, and to hell with it. Because China's built 350 power plants per year, and they don't care what the world says. So do that and stop going cap in hand begging for money from other countries. And once you do that, by the way, that includes privatizing Eskom. That's another story. But once you do that, then, as you go along, you can improve. And eventually, 50 years from now, you'll have a plan to get yourself off of coal if such a method exists. But this stupidity of playing both sides, we're climate friendly. Meanwhile, kids are starving. People are getting emphysema from breathing in charcoal fumes. Deforestation is taking place. Anyway, that's my take on it. Thoughts on that, Rob?
I absolutely 100% agree with you. It's the quickest way to boost a country's economy is introduce cheap, affordable energy. Mm-hmm. And cheap, affordable energy, I'm afraid, does not come from renewables. Mm. That's a problem. It's even Eskom, where they released a media release just recently, where it shows that Eskom can produce energy at, I'm not quoting the 100% there, but around about R1 a kilowatt hour for normal energy. But they're paying the renewable market 20 times that through the general different bid windows that have gone through. Sure enough, the new bid window will come in cheaper than what Eskom can do, but generally it costs Eskom an absolute fortune to buy electricity from these people and then sell it on, which is a major problem. You're absolutely right. We should be taking a leaf out of China's book, and saying, let's retrofit the existing coal power stations. We have vast reserves of coal and gas in South Africa. We export most of that to China. Why? Why are we doing that? We should be using it. Reigniting, well, that's an interesting term. Reigniting.
Well, it's like blasting.
Yes. And then getting the local economy going, getting electricity prices down, getting a stable supply of electricity, and that will attract international investment. We will also have the Mercedes and the BMW plants coming here for cheap electricity. We're also blessed with cheap labor. So it's the perfect destination for the world. However, once again, our government seems to be towing the line of the international, and dare I say, United Nations driven agenda. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it. And the promise there is financial reward. You meet these targets, we'll gift you with this, we'll invest you here. But let's be honest, will those investments ever materialize? Will the country make it to 2030, given its current trajectory, especially on electricity supply and demand? I don't think we'll make it to the end of next year, given the current trajectory. So, here's just a very weird thing that I thought of the other day. Do you remember the whole nuclear deal under Jacob Zuma?
Oh, the Rosatom deal for the Russians.
Yes. How long ago was that? That was 10 years.
10 years ago, yeah.
10 years ago. If we had actually gone with that deal, it was what, 500 billion rand.
50 billion US dollars at least. It was, yeah.
We wouldn't have power problems right now, would we?
Assuming it was actually built, yes.
Yes.
The
Point,
Medupe station still isn't operational fully.
It'll never be finished. That's a money laundering. It's a money laundering operation for government. There's no doubt about that.
But your point is well taken. Had an approach been taken to deliver that nuclear power, you wouldn't be in this mess today.
Totally. If they had actually managed to pull it off. But I'm sure they would have, because it would have been Russian contractors doing it. But here we're sitting, we're still arguing about it. We're still arguing about what power to go for. And the country's going further and further down. Eskom's totally collapsed now. I don't see how it can recover other than privatization, as you say. And well, the future looks bleak because of our power issues. And that is based around, I think, inadequacies and poor choices by our government. I totally agree when you say we should abandon this idea, but have a long-term plan in place. That is absolutely the way to go. In fact, that is what China has done.
Yep.
They have a long-term plan. They've got exemption from the 2030 targets.
Yep.
And why can't we do the same? We're a developing country.
I mean, China
rich. Still calls themselves.
Yeah, China's rich. You're not rich. So why don't you get the same accommodation the Chinese get? What makes them special?
Exactly. And there's no doubt that once a nation becomes more wealthy, education improves, and so on, people become more, your CO2 emissions go down.
Yep.
Because we become more aware. Mm-hmm. Right now, everybody's fighting. The top priority of most South Africans is making it tomorrow with a full stomach, making it to tomorrow with a full stomach. But once you've solved those problems, our priorities shift, and then we start caring about the environment, which is why you see thousands of people attending a protest. Mm-hmm. The demographic of that crowd is
white, rich liberals.
Middle to upper wealth, rich, exactly, because their basic needs are
That's right. On Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they're up near the top of self-actualization. They're not starving. Yes. They're not freezing in their homes. They're not forced to burn charcoal to cook their food or heat their water. And you've hit the nail on the head. And that's a good point to bring up. Is that people who have time on their hands, who have resource on their hands, are the ones that squawk the most. It isn't always the case. I mean, in Nigeria, we've got lots of people who live in a poisoned neighborhood because of broken lines and bunkering and pollution. So the average people are complaining. But usually in this situation, in a developed economy, it's the rich or middle income who have the resources that can complain about this, and they don't see the second, third order effects of what they're doing. Take my plan, ignore this nonsense, develop your country to provide electricity so people can do things and have an improved life, and things will come down. Now, the reason why our emissions have declined is not because the government has set limitations, not because it's demanded so many cars, mileage, although they've done it in the past. The reason that our emissions have gone down is because of technology. We have reduced our energy consumption on average for devices and things that we use. Even though more of it's in use, the percentage of consumption has gone down demonstrably. Better technology, better software, it's a knock-on effect. It's like taxation. Oh, lowering the tax rate will reduce revenue to the state. No, it won't. No, it spurs growth. People buy more stuff. They use more services, and then you get more. The tax revenue, when George Walker Bush reduced the tax rates, increased by nearly 80%, the revenue accrued to the state within 5 years with lower tax rates. And the same thing could happen in South Africa. But now it's easier to call people racist and claim apartheid and go demanding or begging money. Oh, we're losing because they didn't take care of us. And that's a simple way. And they have no shame. More soup, sir, please. Come on. It's really pathetic. It's not leadership.
No, it's not. All they're doing is highlighting their inadequacies. They can't do it on our own.
Exactly.
So we're going to beg for help. We've been here for going on 28 years now.
Yep.
But we still can't get things right. We still need help. Begging bowl goes out. It's ridiculous.
Matthew Dixon's pointing out that Eskom made a 9 billion rand profit for the first half of 2022. Yes, I saw that and I reported on that, but I guarantee that that's accounting profit. It's not genuine profit. But they have, look, under De Ruyter, they've made great strides at cleaning up their balance sheet, but their balance sheet's only one of the problems. The lack of engineers, the theft of cables, the insecurity of the system, the fact that up to 42% of their generating capacity of 52,000 megawatts of power is offline at any given time is a disgrace. South Africa once produced 42% of all electricity consumed in sub-Saharan Africa for 500 million people. 42% of all electricity, which speaks volumes about how few people in Africa actually have electricity, but it also speaks about how powerful and effective Eskom was. Now, at that time, a significant portion of South Africa's population was excluded from the grid. Let's be honest about that. That wasn't just. But the point here is that it's just a mess. And we can go on for hours. But listen, Rob, you've been very generous with your time. And I don't know if you and your family celebrate Christmas or what your persuasion is. But nonetheless, it's an appropriate season to wish you a Merry Christmas. If whether you're a Christian or a person that celebrates a secular holiday, or a Muslim or Jew or a Buddhist, that's your personal information. I won't ask that unless you want to share it. But I do want to wish you a Merry Christmas. And we got a super chat here from Ari, 70 Randy. So, Merry Christmas. I'm not the Salvation Army. I don't teach critical race theory. I'm just ringing the bell because it's Christmas. So, I just thought I'd put that out there. But Rob, Merry Christmas to you and your loved ones, and I hope for the very best. Listen, let's continue this conversation again. I feel like I'm chasing you away. You haven't given me any kind of indication I had to pull the hook on you yet. So, I have this feeling we could keep talking for hours, but I don't want to overstay my welcome, even though it's my program. So, you are welcome back on the program at any time. It's fantastic to have this conversation with you. And you know, I'm interested. I might want to write to you about creating a Dear Pennsylvania, Dear PA, because you got DearSA. Our abbreviation's PA for Pennsylvania, so it'd be Dear PA. So maybe we want to start that here. Good. Yeah, maybe we should do that here in Pennsylvania, because definitely the public needs to know what's going on. So anyway, I always give this to my guests. Let me turn it over to you and give you a few moments if you want to share anything with people. Whether it's a Christmas message or a New Year, or a message of hope, or a message of terror about what's coming, or just about campaigns. Anything you want to share with folks before we wrap up? Okay, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. It's an honor to have been on the show. It really is. And sometimes I feel a bit humbled by the exposure and the questions that come up. But I think to sum up, I think the most important thing for anybody, and especially for the viewers, to recognize is that the government isn't there to help you. The government isn't going to help you. There's no doubt about that. And if anything has proven that, it's this time now during the COVID experience. Government, if they can take an authoritarian gap, they will. It's just the nature of governments. The quickest way to a better society is look after yourself. And then once you've looked after yourself, reach out, extend your arms, grab your family, pull them forward, grab your community, your neighbors and whatever, and then form good, strong relationships with those around you. Get away from your devices. Look up and look what's around you. Become self-empowered and less reliant on government. Once you change that mindset, and realize that you can actually solve most of the problems that you're complaining about to government yourself, then life becomes meaningful. And I think we should embrace that idea. If we want to see change, then we have to be the agents of change. We can't rely on anybody else to do that. And it's very easy to do. It's the reason we set up Dear South Africa. It's the reason we place such an emphasis on that we're just the vehicle for this, but it's driven and powered by the people who have their say and participate on the platform. And really, that's all I can say. But it's been a wonderful chatting to you, Chris. And let's do it more.
Absolutely. No,
I can talk for hours.
Look, I mean, both of us could steal all the oxygen in the room. I was started to say exsanguinate, but that's bleed to death. No, we both asphyxiate because we'd steal the oxygen from each other. But no, let's honestly, let's do this again. There's something we just said here. Lars Sala said, "Tweet prat sus dik chomis." These two guys they're like they're old mates chatting here. I think that's correct translation of that in my mind. But it's
the clan of the beard.
The clan of the beard. That's right. Yeah. So So you get a side look here. So it's down there. It's a lockdown beard, Rob. I said I'd grow it as long as this stupidity continued, and I think I'll be an extra on what's that show? The Duck Dynasty. I'll be an extra on Duck Dynasty before it's over, and the new version of Duck Dynasty. I'll be a regular, or I'll be an extra in ZZ Top now that one of their members has passed on. But and we just got a super chat from Paulie, who's a fireman, so it seems appropriate to ring the fire bell. So thank you for the super chat, Paulie. Appreciate it. He says, fantastic show. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Rob, it's a real pleasure. And thank you for the work that you're doing with DearSA. It's a pleasure to bring that to my audience, to let them know about it, because I think it's an interesting organization. And it's nice to see someone that's trying to get the civilian population, the public, engage with government to get government to respond and do things on behalf of citizens. And I think it's great. And like I said, that's what I did with the election there. The party that I advocate on behalf of, I never heard of them, and I don't really care. I mean, honestly, they're nice people. I've met them now, and they seem to have their heads screwed on. But I don't really. It's not about that. It's about doing the right thing and get people engaged, and that's really cool. Here's another super chat. Wow. Well, I have to keep Rob on for another 10 minutes or so we can make some money. Yeah. So Leah Vinyanza from Rendsburg is a lovely lady who gave super chats. Just gave us 70 rand. She said, "Awesome, thank you, gents. This was stunning." Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Robin is in here from Cape Town. She said, "Same." A lot of people saying really nice things, Rob, and with good measure. So thanks for coming on. It was a lot of fun. Now the hazard for me, Rob, is that I've done 4.5-hour live streams where I wasn't covering events, just chatting. So be careful what you ask for, because I can do long streams. I haven't been doing them of late because of the shadow banning on PooTube, and they've been hiding my audience numbers, that sort of thing, and it gets a little frustrating. But in the past, I've done those. Now, I've also done 11, 12-hour live streams when I covered the choosing of 2020. I was on the air for 12 hours that day. Yeah, I didn't mean to. I was only going to be on for 5 hours, but it just never ended. You know, it just kept going and going and going.
Okay.
Yeah, crazy stuff. But no, thank you once again. Thanks for the stuff you're doing with DearSA. It's nice to see that. Also, I hope that my audience, some of my South African audience, didn't really know what you did. They thought you were just a polling station or something like that. So they've actually learned from this. And I got the sense from at least a handful of people here in the times I glanced over the chat, some people are likely to go check out your organization. The links to both Rob's Twitter account and DearSA's website are below this. Now, I got a little confused. There's a DearSA on LinkedIn, and I wasn't sure if that was you guys, because it only says 3 people. And I'm like, is this somebody trying to take your name? Is that you guys on LinkedIn?
No, we're not on LinkedIn at all.
So
avoid that one.
See, I knew it. Anyway, yeah, so that's not them. So anyway, but the real links are below this. You go check out DearSA and maybe become a participant. If that's the right word, a participant.
Absolutely.
And see what's going on and help people out there. Oh, Annette Beckett called us the Pod Bros too. I like that. I like that. Yeah. Are you familiar with the Pod Bros with Ronaldo and Germ?
Absolutely.
And Ramon. So yeah, no.
Ramon, yeah.
Oh, Richard Lemmer, he called us the Old Bros. That's not even nice.
Oh, nice.
That's not even nice.
Nice.
we are the seasoned bros.
we're the pod dads.
Well, there you go. As long as it's not Opa, then we're in trouble.
Exactly. I realized I was getting old when you walk around and people call you Opa and and
well, last year, because
don't call me uncle. Just don't call me uncle.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Last year, when my channel really took off and I had over 20,000 subscribers, people come in. Everybody's calling me That was before my beard was this long. And some people thought that was rude. I didn't think it was rude. It's a term of endearment, but still, I'd prefer not to be called uncle. It's kind of, but it is a term of endearment. I get it. So it's nice to see the interaction. Thank you all for your comments in the chat. My apologies for not bringing in a lot of it. A lot of you guys were chatting with each other, and the chat was quiet for a long time, which meant that people really paying attention. Thanks for the super chats. That'll help with the Salty Cracks December that we're having here. Hey, Rob, but by the way, we have a big Christmas show. I don't know if you have time on the 23rd. If you want to tune in and watch it, I have musical guests Steve Hofmeyer, Monty Jackson, Giselle, Trevor Dongenet, who used to play for Johnny Clegg and his band. And then we've got, he's a bass player. And then we've got Helen Duplessis, Dean Chancey, plus a couple kids from Australia who sang that song, The Rise, about Australia and overcoming. Anyway, so they're all musical guests. I'll have also Santa's helper, assuming that Mozambique's internet doesn't let us down, will be Jeanette Pretorius, who is a country music singer, Afrikaans, and children's singer. She'll be Santa's helper. We did it last year, but we do 3 hours, and the guest will come on. Dr. Peter Hammond will also be joining us to celebrate the Christ child, that sort of thing. But it's about people sharing their experiences. This year, a little bit different. Initially, I said I'd be reading letters from kids, but they haven't been coming in too many. So if adults want to send letters to Santa, we know who's been naughty or nice, and just don't ask for things and tell us about your Christmas experiences. We'll be reading those. But Rob, if you want to tune in for that, you're welcome to tune in. That's on the 23rd. On the 24th, I typically invite guests back who've been on my program during the year just to pop in on a Zoom session. You can stay 2 minutes, 5 minutes, a half hour if you want, just to say hi and Merry Christmas, that sort of thing. I'll invite you back to that. You're welcome to come in if you like. And then I'm on the air Christmas Day if you're bored, just to let you know, because it's my birthday and why not? Anyway, but let's do this again and we'll chat. I don't think we even need a fixed topic. We didn't really fix the topic today.
Nope, I don't think so at all. I hate fixed topics and formal questions. The chat is the way to go.
Well,
I see where it goes. And
I agree.
Each other's brains.
And I've done a lot of public speaking and I've done a lot of speeches. And the only time I ever prepared speeches was when I was in Liberia. And I didn't do it for myself because all I need is at worst case, especially if there's a lot going on, is I need a 3x5 card or one piece of paper with bullet notes on it, highlighted topics. Don't forget to mention this topic, make sure I cover it or made a sequence. But I mean, I just get up and give the speech because for me, if you have to read the speech, you're just a better dressed chimpanzee. Any monkey can stand up there and do that. I mean, if that's why I liked about Trump. It was extemporaneous. He's got a prepared speech, but he's like, oh, the hell with this. Yeah, let me talk about this. And he just goes for 3 hours. I mean, and it's not just gobbledygook. It was actually substantive stuff, which shocked me. I thought he was just a talking head, but he's actually got a brain on there. But no, it's so I don't really care for the prepared stuff. I think it's frustrating. But I did it in Liberia because the media was new. They were restarting the media after the Civil War, and their journalists weren't very experienced, and also language is a barrier. Even though we speak English, they speak English. Liberian English is not American English. So unless you spoke very slowly and took your time, which there wasn't always time for that, they would miss most of the key parts of speech. But if I wrote the speech, and then I would deviate from it, but wrote and give it to the media, then the points I wanted to be brought out in the news were brought out in the news. So again, Rob, back to your advertising days, knowing your audience, and that's exactly what it was. But
exactly.
Anyway. Yes. But okay, cool. Rob, again, Merry Christmas, and thanks a bunch for coming on. Maybe we'll see you next week if you're able to pop on. And short of that, maybe we'll get you back on before the new year, and let's talk about what's on tap for South Africa in the coming year and for DearSA. How's that?
That'll be absolutely fantastic, and I really, really, really look forward to that and appreciate it. And thanks to all your listeners as well for tuning and supporting. It's absolutely wonderful.
Cool beans.
With that, have a wonderful Christmas as well.
Well, thank you, Rob.
To wish you.
Thank you. No, it's okay.
Birthday.
Well, thank you. I wouldn't have taken offense. The thing about birthdays is that people you get excited. My birthday's in Christmas, so I always got screwed over as a kid because when I was the eldest and I was about ready to go to college, I was 17. When I turned 17, I was still at home, and I left shortly after that to go to college. And all my siblings got this gift and that gift and this gift and that gift, and I got 2 gifts, one for your birthday and one for Christmas. I'm like, what am I, chopped liver here? What's going on here? So to me, it's just another. I love Christmas, the concept of Christmas, whether the religious or the commercial. I love both of it. But for me, this year, Rob, I actually had it in my mind, I guess because of Rona. Maybe it was a Rona-induced fog. I don't know. But I had it in my mind that I was a year older than I actually am. And I was on my genealogy site a couple weeks ago, and I was adding people in and doing research. And I went back to my profile, and it said that I was a certain age. I'm like, wait a second, I made myself a year older. So this year I'm kind of excited because on Christmas Day, I'll turn the age I thought I was all year. I get to be the same number for another year.
That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I have to celebrate the 20th anniversary of my 30th birthday. So
Well, listen, Rob, I tell you, for about 9 years, I was 29. My mother would ask me every year, so your birthday's coming up. How old are you this year? I said, 29. She said, you're not 29. I said, yeah, I am. I said, think about it. If I'm 29, that means you're 48. You're 49. Yeah. So, okay. So every year I'd remind her. She goes, that's right. I haven't turned 50 yet. Thanks for reminding me. Anyway, well, thanks a lot, Rob. I really appreciate it. I'm going to put you in the waiting room, then I'm going to close out the stream. And if you want to hang around for a minute, just to touch base with me in the waiting room. Okay, then once I close the stream, I'll come back. So it'll be about a minute as I make the final remarks, okay? Once again, folks, Rob Hutchinson from DearSA, Managing Director. Thanks a lot, Rob. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Okay. All right, let me put him. So he's in the waiting room. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in. There will be a Night Owls here in about an hour and a half, or hour and 15 minutes, I say. I got to get it set up. There will be a Night Owls if you want to come back. We'll play Giselle. We'll talk a little about Christmas, and we'll have a nice little chat, and I'll check out on the news and give you updates of what's been happening. I am wearing a rugby shirt that was brought up earlier. No, it's not an EFF shirt. Stop that nonsense. It's a Wales 2015 rugby polo. Yeah, that's for Fleshing, because I knew Fleshing would be in the audience today. He's from Wales, so I wore the Welsh shirt today. Thanks a lot, folks, and my special thanks to my guest, who was fantastic, Rob Hutchinson. That was a lot of fun. It's already been 2 hours and 15 minutes, folks. We could have gone for hours, and Rob wants to come back, so that's pretty cool. So, sometimes I had Steve Hofmeyer on for 2 hours, and I almost had to kick him off because we really had a great conversation, but then Steve didn't do social media again, so I haven't been able to get him back on. He's turned down my request twice to come back on because he's performing again, which which is good. The guy's got to make money. I appreciate that. But I'd like to get Steve back on because PooTube deleted my video and I can't find it now. But anyway, thanks a lot to Rob, and Merry Christmas to everybody out there. And thank you for tuning in. To those who celebrate Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah to you, which is, I think, just ended, if I'm not mistaken, this year, based on the calendar. But anyway, folks, thanks a lot. And we'll catch you night owls here in just a little bit. Take care of yourselves and be safe out there. As Big Daddy Liberty says, never trust a commie. As Chris Wyatt says, never trust an ANC cadre because they're coming for you, yours, and everything you've got. And that's the truth of the matter. All right, cheers, everybody. And we'll see you here on Night Owls in just a short while. A little over an hour. Wow, it's not that far away. Take care, everybody. Hang a second here. I can't find my... There it is. I found it. Cool beans. All right, take care, guys. Oh, smash that like button. Come on, man. There's some freeloading going on here. Smash that like button. 92 likes. Come on. This was a Lecca conversation. 92 likes. Stop freeloading. You don't have to pay. Hit the like. There you go. One of you was hiding out there. I just saw someone push it. Cheers, folks. Thanks a lot. See you shortly.